Friends, fans, and fine folk, grab your drinks and snacks and come down to the campfire for this short rest with me and my friends, the Dungeon Dudes! Hello, Dungeon Dudes, how are you?
Hello.
Great.
It is good to have you here, both Kelly and Monty, joining me for a short rest.
And
So
needed
welcome,
one.
welcome in. It's yeah, I know, right? This is
Yeah.
one of the best things about the show being called Short Rest, because most of my guests are like, oh, thank God, a time when I'm forced to just sit down and chill for a couple hours. Welcome in, all of the chat. I see a lot of new names here, and a lot of repeating names as well. It's good to see you all here. Hopefully you recognize me because you're in my stream. And if you don't recognize me, maybe you're here from the Dungeon Dudes streams. I'm Robert Hartley. I am a full-time content creator for Dungeons and Dragons. Let me introduce my guests, Kelly and Monty. What do people know you guys from? What might they have seen your faces from? All the people in my community who are going, hey, I recognize those guys. What are they likely recognizing you from?
Uh, well, we are the Dungeon Dudes, and we are also content creators. Probably best known for our YouTube content. We do helpful tips and advice for Dungeons and Dragons, and occasionally other TTRPGs. And if you don't know us from that, you may have also heard of um, our books, Drakkenheim, Dungeons of Drakkenheim, Sebastian Crow's Guide to Drakkenheim, and our current Kickstarter for Monsters of Drakkenheim. So Monty and I are the creators behind the World of Drakkenheim, which also includes an actual play series that we do that's been running for 5 years now in the World of Drakkenheim that inspired the books that are now coming out.
That's
Is there
awesome.
anything else, Monty, that people might know us from?
Yeah, the YouTube shows and the actual plays are there are and the books. It's YouTube, AP, books. Yeah.
And conventions, if they've bumped into you at a convention, maybe.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah, true,
Maybe
true.
at a few. We've been much more active heading off to the cons lately, and may have run past us or our publisher Ghostfire Gaming at Gen Con or other cons. We work with Ghostfire, who is the publisher behind the Grim Hollow campaign setting as well.
Mm-hmm.
So they help bring our books to life through Kickstarter.
I had a representative of Ghostfire on a short rest not too long back. Actually, I was speaking with Ben from Ghostfire on a short rest.
Yeah,
Um,
Ben's a
Nice.
very
We
good
uh,
friend.
we
I do
love
find
Ben.
it really interesting that you are Canadian creators and your publishers an Australian publisher. Like that's quite often, especially from down here, down under, New Zealand and Australia, we have to partner with people from North America, and because that's where a lot of the businesses tend to be, and it's funny to see it going the other direction.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I mean
go
for
ahead.
us when we were looking to publish the Drakkenheim as a book, we pitched the project to several different publishers, and we really felt that Ghostfire was the right match for us.
Mm-hmm.
We'd written for them previously on their Grim Hollow Player's Guide, where we wrote a couple subclasses for Grim Hollow, and we really felt that their team had the right fit for the dark fantasy world that we wanted to do with
That's good.
Drakkenheim. And so that was really the right fit in terms of that collaboration. With we can get into this later. Is like we very much made that intentional decision to work with a publisher for our books
Yeah,
as opposed to doing it completely on
self-published.
our
Yeah.
own. And self-publishing it. And so we can talk about the nuances of why that's a choice.
Yeah, I would love to,
Yeah,
but we'll save it for the main discussion later. Before we
yeah,
get too far in, I like to just set up the short rest with my guests first. You're going to
yeah. Let's do
help
it.
me to DM for a second here. We're going to put on our creative narrative brains and think, if we are having a short rest, then we must be in the midst of some kind of a quest. It could either be a entirely fictional one. It can be a fictionalized version of something you're actually questing with at the moment, or whatnot. So, what is it? What sort of a short rest are we on, and what is the main quest that we are resting from in the first place?
Uh, Goblins stole our manuscript for
Right. Okay, I
for our
like that.
book, and we
Yeah.
are questing to get it back
Nice.
in time to deliver it to our publishers.
Right, yeah,
Yeah.
I love that.
And we've
Hopefully,
hired
hopefully
you
not
as the
something that
local.
is, yeah, hopefully not something that is based in reality. It's just lost to the file somewhere in the ether. And you're like, I don't, it's gone. The entire Word document's gone.
That's that is a low grade nightmare
Right?
for a lot. Fortunately, there's enough cloud stuff now that I feel
Yeah,
pretty
right.
secure with a lot of things. But I definitely do remember before all the Google Drive,
Yeah.
Dropboxes, and all those things, carrying around a USB stick on my keychain
Yeah.
with like my important documents and writing on it. Yeah.
Having backups of your backups, yeah, and having like
Yeah.
I don't know if you went as far as having like an external hard drive that you keep in like a fireproof lockbox or whatever in your house, but I know a
Oh,
lot of
yeah.
writers that do that.
I
Just
think I
having
would rather real goblins break in and steal my manuscript than deal
Then
with it disappearing in the ether of the
digital,
internet.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, at least with goblins, there's a chance.
Yeah, so
But
I'm a local goblin noble, a goblin ranger or some kind that's well versed in their behaviors, and you've hired me to help track them down. And where are we? We're out in the woods. Are we in a cave somewhere? Where have we stopped for a rest?
oh, I
Why not both?
figure.
We're in a cave in the woods. Or Monty, go ahead. Where are we?
What about like what is like a creative wasteland? Is there some sort of like metaphorical, or maybe
Are
like
we
is
in literally a metaphorical wasteland?
a metaphorical
Could be.
wasteland, and like could there be like an actual dungeon that is like literally a metaphor for writer's block or
I think
right.
I think like because we're on like a quest that is about all writing and things. I think we've ended up going to like a Fey type realm, or like the plane of dreams or something, the plane of creativity. And the goblins have taken our manuscript there, and we're having to walk past like there's like a giant Chekhov's gun just as the entrance to this writer's. There's all sorts of like.
Oh, that's going to come back later.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there's all sorts of like writing metaphors in this plane of creativity.
Yeah. And like the wise sage Aristotle is going to tell you about all the like highs and lows of the tragic arc.
The first person to greet you as you enter this realm is a hero, but his face keeps changing because he's a hero with 1,000 faces.
Yes, yes, yes.
I was thinking of that reference, and you got there. You got there. I was like, what?
Yeah.
Hero with 1,000 faces. Yeah.
And we found
Yeah.
a metaphorical writer's block. We just come across like a huge stone block that's just blocking the path, and we just have to kind of take a short rest while we think about how to deal with it. What are we eating and drinking on this short rest? I just got water, IRL. I think the water is a metaphor for something. I don't know.
Yeah.
What do you guys got?
Like every time that I'm working on a manuscript, I actually didn't bring any drinks or snacks with me, and probably should pay attention to my health when I'm taking a short rest.
I have an arcane vial of sparkling star water, aka soda.
Nice. I totally get that, Kelly, where it's like the hyper focus of doing something, and then you're like working and working and working and working, and then you're like, holy shit, it's like 8 p.m. How did that happen? Wait a minute, 8 p.m. Did I have lunch today? I don't think.
Yeah,
No, I think
yeah.
I sat down at 10 a.m. And then your brain's like, oh, are we listening to our body now? Here's all of the thing. You haven't been to the toilet in so many hours, and you haven't stood up, and you need to stretch, and you.
Yeah.
I get that with
It's
DMing
actually-
a lot.
It's so wild. Today I was writing a bit, and it did get to the point where I like finally zoned out of writing and was like, I need to go to the washroom. I haven't eaten. I should probably shower. What am I doing? And like I then had to go take care of everything that my body required. Before I sat back down and did that.
I get that a lot with DMing, especially like I'll get to the end of a game that's like a really epic game, and then just as I'm packing away, I'm like, man, that's so good. I could have gone for another 2 hours. As I'm packing away, I'm like, oh god, oh god, everything's in the red. All of the gauges in my body are all just like all up and I'm like, oh damn, I haven't dealt with anything for a while. Hyper focus. So we've set up our short rest. We're having a short rest on our goblin mission. Let's begin with talking about the name, the Dungeon Dudes. Where did that begin? Like, tell us the origin of starting out and deciding that that's what you were going to call yourselves.
I think okay, so I remember Monty and I wrote down a bunch of names, and at the time we were working together at a retail computer shop, and I remember taking the list of like 10 names. Like we had some other ones like Bardic Inspiration or I forget. There were some pretty cheesy ones. Not that Dungeon Dudes isn't cheesy, but I polled people at the store. I was just walked around and being like, which of these names do you think sounds the coolest? And we got like a tie between Dungeon Dudes and I think Bardic Inspiration. But then Monty and I were talking about the vibe that we wanted going into it, and two things came up. It was, and you'll actually notice this if you look at our logo, but the two vibes were classic Legend of Zelda,
Right.
mainly like the logo from A Link to the Past,
Yeah.
and Wayne's World.
Oh,
So
okay. Yeah.
we were like, we're two guys, we're going to be sitting in a basement talking about nerdy stuff. It's like
Yeah.
Wayne's World. So
Yeah.
we went full in on like we made the logo feel a little bit like the classic Zelda logo, but then we
Yeah.
had like the guitar riff that came in and the explosion, and it was like party on sort of
Nice.
vibes. So, and we thought Dungeon Dudes sounded like a little cheesy Wayne's World classic retro style. So that's
Yeah.
actually how the name came to be.
I
And of
like
course,
it.
at the time we'd started filming in my basement, which has
Yeah.
like that classic like 1980s wood, like 70s wood paneling, and so like there was like a little bit of a spiritual resonance with Wayne's World, and I think we still kind of like that production value as well of the what Wade and Garth and
Yeah.
or Mike Myers and Dana Carvey and we're trying to capture with that. Although I don't think we've ever like dressed up as Wayne and Gar.
No, we're
You
our
know,
own
Not
brand of
not yet.
yeah,
80s,
not
90s.
not yet. Maybe
yeah,
for like a special event of some kind. That'd be an interesting sort of anniversary video or something. What
yeah.
has there ever been a time since coming up with the name that you've regretted it, or has it been like it's fit perfectly ever since? Like it's just fell right into it.
I've I've always been happy with it. I know that like, early on we got some like back when negative comments hurt a lot more because you only got like four comments on a
Yeah.
video.
Yeah.
Um, there would every time I saw one that was like Dungeon Dudes, that's a stupid name, or please stop doing your stupid intro. And we were just like, no, if you don't get the intro, that's your problem. We love how cheesy it is. We love that it's over the top. Like
Yeah.
that's the vibe, and I've always loved it.
That's good.
It's just fun. We
Yeah.
have fun doing it.
I think a part of it is like if you're playing Dungeons and Dragons, you're already past the point of embracing cringe.
Oh yeah.
As far as I'm concerned, and like so it was a bit of a mindset thing of like those early comments of people being like Dungeon Dudes, what a cringy name. It's like, come on, we're pretending
You're
to be
playing
elves.
D&D online, dude.
Yeah, like let's get a little bit over ourselves here and just have fun with it.
And you've been doing this long enough, I imagine, to get the handle Dungeon Dudes on all of the different platforms, or have you had to? Yeah.
I
No,
think like we had to do, I think somewhere it was Facebook maybe we had to be the Dungeon Dudes, which was a little annoying, but everywhere else we're Dungeon Dudes. The question is whether we're Dungeon underscore dudes or just Dungeon Dudes.
Hmm.
That depends on the platform, but
And whether they
yeah,
allow
yeah,
spaces
we're
and special characters, and yeah,
yeah.
I
yeah.
think
But
now if you Google Dungeon Dudes, I think we're the whole first page or
although
first few
I
pages.
do wonder if because maybe I do like to keep mindful of like when new platforms pop up and be like, okay, I better register this now.
Yeah.
I definitely had that in the debacle of Twitter becoming a cesspool, and Hive popped up, and Mastodon popped up, and everybody was talking about this is gonna be the next one. This is gonna be the next one. Blue Sky came about, and all of a sudden I was like, all right, let's get on every one of these and just register Robert Hartley GM just in case.
Yeah.
Yeah, we did, but we're still posting more on. I'm still calling it Twitter,
Yeah.
and I do admit that Twitter's gone very much downhill, but it's still where most of the community is.
Yeah, yeah, I hear that, and unfortunately, I was just like, there's too many platforms. I'll make do with that. I'll get on there eventually if I have to, but it's just such a potential for messy drama and stuff that I was like, I can cope without it. But I still got my handle on it just to make sure. I even set up an OnlyFans account because I was like, that's funny as fuck to have an OnlyFans account, and B, I'd rather have it and own it myself than somebody else get the handle and then pose and pretending to be me and start making content on there. That'd be.
I worry we might send the wrong impression if we
suddenly
that one.
I think the advice right now is we should just spend the whole 2 hours talking about the Dungeon Dudes OnlyFans.
We're gonna start setting up. This is an idea that I want to pitch to you guys. That's the only reason I brought you on the show, to pitch OnlyFans to you. I also when I set it up, I was like, oh man, it would be funny to do like some mock photographs that are like me posing topless but behind a DM screen or whatever, so you can't see anything other than my shoulders, and like pretending like I'm doing sexy pics, but they're all Dungeons and Dragons pics.
I figured we could use the same logline. Our Dungeon Dudes OnlyFans is advice for dungeon masters and guides for players.
Yeah, exactly. Dungeon Dudes already has a hint of the BDSM to the name anyway.
Yeah. Early on, our logo, a lot of people we had like a low res logo for a while that a lot of people would message us and say, your logo makes it look like it says Nungeon Nudes. And I was always like, why? I don't see that. But yeah, so not only do we have the BDSM angle, but you can mistake the second D for an N, and then it's just
it's
nudes.
right there for you, isn't it? OnlyFans Dungeon Nudes.
Yeah.
Like that's very funny.
Dungeon Nudes, we're there.
If this Kickstarter doesn't do as well as you were hoping, you got your next project lined up. We're sorted. Let's take it way back and talk about your origins, essentially, like your origins into TTRPGs. How did you both get into it, and then how did you meet and start wanting to come up with a channel in the first place?
Let Monty start there. He goes back further than me.
Yeah, so I guess I grew up in a small town in Ontario, and growing up I had this really fantastic sci-fi fantasy bookstore that was on the main drag of my hometown. And when I first got my first summer job when I was 15, I had already been into Warhammer and Magic the Gathering, and so this bookstore would stock like Magic cards and like a small number of like not D&D, Warhammer miniatures. And so I went in one day and the owner of the store was like, you should check out all these D&D things that are coming in. And this was around when 3rd edition just first came out. So I bought the starter set and got all my high school friends that I was playing Magic and Warhammer with into D&D. And that was just it. It was like latched on hard, and it was like, wow, this is my game.
I often tell people that, like, I understand, I can empathize with how addictive substances can be, like, because it was like that for D&D. Like, I only played it once. They say like, oh, heroin, not even once. It can be so addictive, it can latch you even just from trying it once. And it's like, I always thought, surely you've got a bit of self control, a bit of willpower. If you don't need to be latched on after one usage of these hardcore drugs that all the cops are coming to your school to tell you, no, not even once, blah blah blah. And then I played D&D one time, and I was like, pupils dilated. Suddenly I was like itching, being like, where's my next D&D? When do I play? When do I play D&D again? Can somebody want to play with me? I want to buy some dice. I went out and bought the PHB, the Monsters Manual, and the Dungeon Master's Guide. Didn't have a group to play with, but just wanted to read them all. Yeah, it's sometimes D&D can really latch on.
Yeah, so I feel like I must have helped keep that bookstore open from just ordering in. I mean, it was a great shop. It was probably not. I'm overstating myself because the owner was so amazing and just beyond like whether it was, as I said, it was very much a bookstore, not like your typical friendly local game store. Like it was comic books, novels, and then there was a single shelf just for like RPG stuff and gaming stuff in the back of the store. But that was all it was, and that was all it took. And from there, I kind of made getting other people into D&D how I made friends. So when I went to university, and that was how I made friends with all my university roommates. We all played a campaign together where for years, and then when I moved to the big city here in Toronto, finding the local game groups was how I first made my friends in the city. And then when I started working at the computer shop that Kelly was also working at, that was where quite naturally I was like, all right, gonna make some friends with my coworkers by getting them all into D&D.
The
And
first, the
so
first one,
that,
first one's free. Just
yeah.
dealing out little baggies with dice in them. It's like, do you want to try? Do you want to try
Essentially,
roll some
Monty was
dice?
the drug dealer of D&D.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, 401 Games, which was our local store for many of us, like that was the thing. It was only a couple blocks up the street from the shop that we worked at, and so after work, it would be like, all right, after work, we're going over to 401 Games. We're going to get you your first set of dice.
And
That's
away we
awesome.
went.
And that's your
Yeah.
introduction to D&D, Kelly?
Yeah, well, okay, so my story dates back all the way to the original Warcraft game and the original Diablo. And the reason why I bring those up is very important for this story. So I was playing a lot of Warcraft and a lot of Diablo. And then Warcraft is actually the gateway that got me into Warhammer because I had a bunch of friends show me Games Workshop books and be like, Warcraft, but on a table with your friends rolling dice. And I was like, okay, that sounds really cool. And I wasn't fully sold until I saw the Undead Army, and then I was like, okay, let's go.
Nice.
Um, and so I was playing
Warcraft, but on a
Warhammer.
table with your friends and no money because you've spent it
Yeah,
all on
yeah.
minis.
Yeah.
That was a wild part. I remember I still have this fond memory of my dad taking me to a Games Workshop and me needing like I wanted the general for my army. I wanted Vlad von Karstein, and he was like $20. And I remember being like, Dad, I want this. And he was like, why is this piece of metal $20? That doesn't make any sense to me. And I'm like, well, he's a really good character. And he's like, nothing you're saying makes any sense. Why is it 20? Like, um, so yeah, I was really into
Because supply and
Warhammer, but then
demand, Dad.
yeah, yeah. I was really into Warhammer for a very long time, and oddly enough, I tried a TTRPG once and I loved it, but I never got into it in high school. And that was oddly enough, I got invited to a Vampire the Masquerade game. And the selling point for that was that I actually preferred playing Diablo over Warcraft. And so Warcraft got me into Warhammer, and somebody was like, "Well, if you like Warhammer because it's Warcraft on a table, you should try D&D or another TTRPG because it's Diablo but on a table." And I was like, "Whoa, what?" So I tried Vampire the Masquerade one time. I had no idea what was going on, but I had a blast. Um, but then that was like a one-time invite. Somebody in my school who I wasn't very close with just wanted to try it out, and
Yeah.
I was mildly interested. And then I didn't really think about it again until I got to Toronto, and as soon as Monty started, he's like, "You ever play D&D?" And I was like, "I have always wanted to. My whole life I've wanted to. Please teach me D&D." And we
And
spent a
Monty, you
few
hear that and
days.
you're like, oh, the perfect customer.
Yeah, yeah. And similar to you, I think the reason why the channel started is because Monty was already obsessed with D&D,
Mm,
and then I played one game and I was like, all right, I'm gonna learn everything there is to know about
yeah.
this game, and I'm gonna absorb it all. And just like over the next few months, I started buying all the books. I
Hmm.
started reading them front to back. I was a sponge and I
Yeah.
loved it. And that kind of grew into, I'm going to call it the perfect storm. So,
Yeah.
I assume the other question was how did we start the channel?
Yeah.
So the channel came into existence because there was a perfect storm of Monty and I working together, becoming friends, playing D&D together. We had a great time doing all of that. I had gone to school for film and was trying to find some way to use that diploma I had saying that I was a filmmaker. I was on the side, I was filming commercials, short films, trying to do things like that, but it wasn't really going anywhere. On top of that, at the computer shop that I worked at, my job was teaching people how to use computers. So I would be the person on the floor helping people understand how technology works. So I had to go through special training for teaching and education and public speaking. So here I had a film background, public speaking, and teaching,
Yeah.
and an obsession with D&D. Monty, meanwhile, was getting his PhD in theater and was also working as a teacher teaching theater. So you had theater background,
Right.
teaching, and an obsession with D&D. And one day I just luckily asked Monty if he wanted to turn on cameras. And I think the story there was we were both answering a lot of questions on internet forums and the Facebook group in the D&D spaces, and I got really sick of answering the same questions over and over again.
Mm-hmm.
So it kind of started as a joke to Monty, and I think we used to laugh, being like, "Man, wouldn't it be cool if we could make a job out of D&D?" And D? And we would laugh and then not do anything about it.
Ah,
But
ridiculous notion.
yeah,
Yeah.
but then there was the one day that I was just like, what if we just filmed ourselves answering those questions that we see all the time? And then whenever we see that question being asked, we'll just post a link to our video instead of having to type out the answer. And that's technically how Dungeon Dude started.
That's I always like to think of some like extra dimensional creatures that can see in four dimensions and they can see timelines and things. And I always like to think that they're watching our lives knowing full well where they're going to end up, and then just like the drama's coming, the excitement and drama's coming from them going, oh, how long's it going to be before they realize that that's what they're destined for? Because like you say, I've got an acting degree, I've got a maths degree, I've got a theatre background and film background, and so I'm a storyteller who's really good with numbers, and I've got an analytical brain for like for
Yeah.
keeping rules and things. And my whole life growing up, I was always like super into storytelling and just like playing pretend, make believe, play pretend, dress up, that sort of stuff. And so it was kind of like Dungeons and Dragons is what this kid's destined for. But when will he realize? Oh, at this stage of his life, he thinks he's going to be an actor. He thinks acting because it's close, it's scratching the itch, but it's not quite what he's wanting to do. So he's going to eventually give up on that and go back to school to do maths. Oh, he's back at school. Here it comes. Here it comes. Now he's got a degree in maths and a degree in acting. He's basically got a degree in Dungeons and Dragons, and there it is. He's introduced to D&D, and he's found the rest of his life. I always find it really fascinating once you find that thing and you go, oh, this is what I was destined for, and it's like everything's come together finally. It's like the middle of a Venn diagram or something.
Yeah, I definitely felt like for myself, because I found D&D so early in my own life. I always found, especially when I was doing a lot of theater and working with a lot of people in theater, um, because I was friends with a lot of people that like performance art and more interactive forms of theater. There was always this sort of thing of like, you just want to play D&D with the audience, don't you? Like that's really all you want to do, is you just want to play D&D with an unsuspecting audience. And so the more I've come to see kind of the like, and this is all like people who are really like into Brecht and sort of like post dramatic theater and stuff like that has like a lot of that sort of experience sort of stuff. And it kind of, you see people come through that and they either end up in, I think they find either that they love escape rooms or they love actual plays, right? And
Right? Yeah,
so
yeah.
I think that the sort of the confluence of all these things. I even remember a friend during my master's being like, Monty, you haven't found the medium that you want to be working in yet. It doesn't
Mm,
exist.
mm,
And this was right around the time that I think the very early wave of like AP podcasts were only just
right,
getting
right.
started, with things like Acquisitions Incorporated
Yeah.
and things like that, and so once that sort of grew, like the idea that people would want to watch and follow an actual play of D&D and treat it like an ongoing story, was just like so foreign that people
Mm.
would watch this. And even now, like talking to my PhD supervisor after the fact and talking to other people that I worked with a lot in theater, like they find it unbelievable, right? And especially the scale of how things operate differently, right? Like a theater space where if you get 500 people sitting in a theater watching a
Uh-huh.
play,
Uh-huh.
that's a
Yeah.
depending on your venue, that can be a pretty, we've got a few larger venues than that in Toronto, but like in a lot of the indie theater spaces in
Hmm.
Toronto, they're capping out at
You'd be
500
raving. You'd
seats.
be raving about it to
Yeah,
all your friends. Oh my god, I filled out a 500 seat
yeah,
theater, and yeah.
yeah, right. And but then the idea that you get 100 people, 200 people, 300 people on an or more on a live stream watching you play D&D, just
Mm.
completely alien. The idea that that would even be possible, especially because it has that you go to the improv comedy venues and now you're down to like 200 people tops,
Yeah.
right? And so the kind of the intersections of all these things in other worlds are very different from the sort of the massiveness of the internet. And I think for
Hmm.
me, coming from a theater background, I was always really interested in like, you know, theater very much has that scale problem where, part of the part of the nature of theater is that it is physically in the same place at the same
Hmm.
time, like that liveness. And I was always fascinated with like challenging that idea of like, does it? And I,
Does it
I
have to
think
be
more and more,
live? Yeah.
yeah, or what does it even mean to be live,
Yeah.
right? And
Like,
and so
does the
now,
audience have to be in the exact same location as you for it to be live? Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
What
and
is
and
the meaning of live?
well, I mean,
42.
10 years ago when I was starting my studies, like that was a very present question of like,
Mm.
what does it even mean to be live? But now I think, especially after COVID and everything, like the notion that liveness like that you can't have community even when people are physically separated is it. I don't think a lot of people are necessarily debating that anymore,
No.
especially because of the ways in which we see, you know, I think we're very fortunate in the TTRPG community is that we're so spread out. Our community relies on being able to connect through the internet to
Hmm.
really be able to create that. And I mean, it even bears out in the work that we do for Drakkenheim, where our art director is based is EU based. Our other team members are in the
Hmm.
UK. We
Hmm.
we have other team members in Australia. We have a
Yeah.
few more people that are in the States. We have artists that are all over the world. Kelly and I are based in Canada. So the whole notion of like the international nature of the way TTRPGs are produced and
Hmm.
created, and then where the printing and the manufacturing, you add all that on, is really essential, I think, to the hobby and to the industry as a whole.
Yeah, 100%. Like my deputy, Fancy Unicorn, in the chat there, she's Scotland based, and I'm in New Zealand. We literally couldn't be further away from each other while still on planet Earth, and yet
Right.
we work together, very closely on all of the projects that we're working on, and it's just the nature of the internet having brought people together to the point. I'm old enough to remember speaking to my uncle on the phone when I lived in England and he was in New Zealand, and having a delay just on the phone line, like a landline, and then there's awkward conversations where you go, "How are you? Are you?" And then he answers, and you go, "Yeah, no, you go."
Yeah,
And then having to wait for the phone line to literally send off down actual physical lines until they can shoot off and then eventually get to New Zealand. And I thought it was amazing. We're talking to somebody on the other side of the world, and yeah, there's a few seconds delay, and now we are anyone in the world. You're
Yeah.
talking to them, seeing their faces, all real time. So it's really just completely destroyed the idea that a community has to be in the same location, the same place to be a community. We still have to deal with time zones, which is a pain in the ass, especially with fucking
Yeah,
daylight
yeah.
savings constantly screwing it up.
And I will say, and that's also why conventions, I think, are still so
Yeah.
important, because it is nice to like that is one of the flip sides of it, is that I have found that when you're in the same room together, you can get a lot more done faster, and you can build those
Oh yeah.
bonds in a different way. And I think that's why for Callie and I personally, like, we still vastly prefer playing D&D in person together
in-person D&D
over
is
playing.
miles and above
Yeah,
better. The
yeah, and
one of the downsides, I'll say, of the internet making the community not have to be in the same place anymore is that there's no 9 to 5 hours. There's no way of like turning off at a particular time. I can't just be like, oh, I'm only going to work. I'm going to get a work-life balance by making sure that I don't work past 6 p.m. or whatever. Because I wouldn't be able to do that, because at my 6 p.m. suddenly Australia and Asia are waking up, and Europe are coming round into slightly approaching morning, and so you have to be working in the evenings if you're going to catch this time zone, and you have to have a meeting at 6 o'clock in the morning if you're going to catch this other time zone, and yeah, it can be a real pain in the ass for that sort of stuff. So I think it's becoming hard to get work-life balance, right?
Yeah, I think that is one of the trickiest parts of this job now is like, especially with us being based all over the world with all the people that we collaborate with, it means that like, Monty and I have our scheduled time in the studio that would be work-life balanced if it wasn't for the fact that all of our meetings with our publishers have to happen at like 8 o'clock at night, and then other meetings have to happen first thing in the morning. And, we have a bunch of communities that we participate in that are operating through all hours and occasionally need to ask us questions. We have people, even like our editors are working in the evening, and if they need something, they message us. And then we need to jump
Yeah.
onto a computer, and like it can
Yeah, and
happen
if you'd
anytime.
logged out at like 8 p.m. and your editor has a problem at your 9 p.m. and then you just don't see it until your 9 a.m. the next day, like the editor's waiting for a response for a good 12 hours, and by the time you do
Yeah.
respond, the editor's not working anymore. Everything would
Yeah.
take a hell of a lot longer, so you just kind of have to go, okay, how do I find a work-life balance where I'm still actually on call essentially at all times?
Yeah.
It's tricky. I thankfully I've got a group of moderators who are amazing people that volunteer for the Discord and things that are just like round the clock. There's also people in all sorts of different time zones around the world, and usually they're active enough that at any one time there's at least a mod or two on. And it just kind of spread out your team around the world so that somebody's available to deal with something even when you're sleeping.
Yeah, we have a good moderator team on our Discord that kind of spans different time zones as well, so that's definitely helpful.
So let's chat more about like the origins of the channel and how it began. You said that you had this sort of like almost throwaway joke idea of like, what if we just record some things? In those early days when you were starting to record for the channel, did you see success like right away, or was it like a real grind? Was it a slog? Was it just kind of like a hobby that you were doing part time and then eventually you made a decision? What did the early days look like?
The first 6 months were basically screaming into the void. And we'd posted pretty regular content for that period. So we started posting in the summer of 2017. And it really wasn't until winter that year in early 2018 that we started doing our class guide videos. And that was when we started to notice the channel pick up steam.
Right.
And so we did full blown. There's some of the oldest videos on the channel, but they still get views today. And like we've wanted to remake them for so long, but we've held back because of the new PHB coming out later this
Right.
year.
Yeah.
So finally, those old videos are going to get remade this year. But that was what started to pick up the steam of things. And by the fall of 2018 was when we started our actual play, and that was because so many people were asking, "Will you guys start an AP? We want to watch you play."
Hmm.
And it was a year later, towards the end of 2019, that we were getting our silver play button for 100K subscribers, and
Nice.
that was when we were like, what even is this? And but it wasn't until partway through COVID that both Kelly and I were like, okay, we can leave the day jobs, and this is our
Right. Yeah.
full time gig now. And so but I do remember that first, it was, I think, the summer of 2018, when the channel was monetized and we started getting some returns from it, where we're like, oh, now we can invest in some better gear, because we started literally just like with like the cheapest
Yeah.
lights that you could buy on Amazon, and a tripod adapter for Kelly's iPhone, and we had to borrow a microphone. And so it really was a very bottom of the barrel setup. And like, I had some gear from my, because I'd done some video work with theater, so I had some cameras and stuff that we were able to use for the actual play. But it really was a long learning process. And I understand, so everyone has a different course of how they grow on YouTube. And so for us, um some people have told us, even our really good friends like Ginny D have been like, that you guys started to get a following after 6 months is amazing, and it took me this long. And everyone has a different journey. It's kind of a matter of luck if the
Yeah.
algorithm decides to
Yeah.
grace you with its
Yeah.
blessings. But we stayed consistent with it, and I think that's basically the biggest thing, is like consistency, knowing how to make good video titles and thumbnails, and making good content. Um, it is a grind, like, but it eventually we got there.
Do you do a lot of like chasing the algorithm, like trying to second guess what it is that's why certain videos are doing well, certain others? Like, because I imagine like a lot of
Yeah.
YouTubers, you can put up a video that you're expecting to do gangbusters, and then all of a sudden it's like flopping, and you're like, what
Yeah.
is it about it?
We knew the tier ranking stuff was going to do really, really well.
Right.
And
Yeah.
like, we also know that like we do a lot of videos that are like 5 tips for, or 5 spells
Yeah.
that we
Yeah.
really, really like. And so
Anything with
like,
like a BuzzFeed clickbaity, like you got to try
it,
and go like
It's
yeah,
it's got to be something that baits people to click on it, but also then delivers, because you don't want it to be
yeah,
entirely
the
BuzzFeed
secret
clickbait.
sauce, yeah. The secret sauce is that clickbait titles work,
Yeah.
and you need to be aware that they work. And we've at first, I remember us being like, "Do we need more clickbaity titles?" And it was like, "Oh, I don't want to go there." But the thing is that you can have a clickbaity title, and when it sucks is when you see like an article that's like 5 of the worst actors in Hollywood, or like whatever, and you click
Yeah.
on it, and then it's like gibberish and garbage.
Yeah.
But the
Yeah.
point was that like Monty and I are like, well, we can make a clickbaity title. We're just gonna fill it and jam pack that video with useful
Yeah.
information. Um, and it's kind of the marrying of the two. You want a title that's catchy. You want a thumbnail that's catchy. I don't like even using the term clickbaity because that's a negative term generally.
Yeah, it's got
Because
negative connotations
clickbait,
because it comes with the understanding that you click on something and then you've been baited into watching something that's not actually worth
yes.
it. And so it's not really
So I'll
clickbait if
say
it's actually a worthy video.
the better term I think is you need a catchy title and a good thumbnail because that's what people are going to see. But then you also want when they click on the video and start watching, you want the content to be worth watching. And
Yeah.
our content isn't for everybody. I've learned that like we do pretty long form discussions. Um, and I mean, one of the positive things I heard that kind of really solidifies what Monty and I have always tried to do. I saw a really positive comment the other day that said, the thing that I like about Dungeon Dudes is that there's very little editing, and so you're getting
Mm,
genuine Kelly and Monty
mm,
sitting there talking to you. And that was always the vibe. We have scripts, but our scripts are always point form notes,
yeah.
and we look at the point form note and then we just talk about it for a few minutes and then we move on to the
Mhm.
next point form note. And
Yeah,
so it is very genuine, and that is why it's a little bit longer form, is because Monty and I, as you can tell talking to us here, have a tendency to ramble.
Yeah.
yeah,
um, and
Who's
so
who's
that's
whose unenviable job is it to go through and then edit your rambling into a cohesive narrative?
It was mine for many, many years. At the
Uh-huh.
end of last year is when we decided to hire a couple editors. The with all the book writing and all of the other things that Monty and I are having to focus on, it just got to a point where my work-life balance
Yeah.
had been thrown out the window with editing
Mm-hmm.
all of our videos.
Editing
Um,
sucks.
and yeah,
It
and
takes
so
so much
it
time.
just got to the tipping point where it was like either I'm gonna burn myself out completely or we
Yeah.
need to hire editors.
Yeah. And was that a difficult thing from like a control perspective, like knowing I've had complete creative control over the edits and now I'm giving it to somebody else and hopefully they understand the style that we go for.
Yeah, so actually what happened is the two editors are two people that were already on our team. And they had been
Okay.
telling me for 6 months that they were ready to take over editing. And I was going, yeah, 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 we'll get that going. We'll get that going. But I
Couldn't let
couldn't
go.
do it, and I don't know why.
Yeah.
It was my baby. And
Mm-hmm.
for some reason there was this weird little voice in my head that was like, if you're not the editor, then what are you?
Mm.
And it turns out I'm a lot of other things. But I had to just be okay with letting go of that.
Yeah.
And you know, there were some I won't go into too much detail, but there were some life events at the end of last year that demanded a lot of my time.
Mm.
And so it was in that moment that it was forced,
Yeah.
where I was
Yeah. Yeah.
so unwilling to let it go, but I knew I had to. And then all of a sudden I had no time and I couldn't edit anymore. And that's when I was like, all right, emergency, you guys need to step in and edit. And I'm so thankful that we were able to do that.
Because
Because yeah, it's
as soon
saved
as you
us.
have, it's like, oh yeah, that's fine. Like you're doing a great job.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I had the
yeah.
same with my Deputy Fancy. Like for the longest time, I was editing all of my Twitch tales, my interactive D&D game that I run with my Twitch chat. And it's a lot of edits in those videos because a lot of time is me waiting for a response because it's a game where I'm the dungeon master on screen and the only player is the hive mind of chat and they're controlling a single character. And so there's a lot of times when I'm like giving something to do and then I wait for them to respond and I'm like checking the chat and being like, what are people saying? Most of you seem to want to go left. So you go left down the dungeon. And so I'm editing that out and I'm trying to like keep it snappy and there's all sorts of times when I'm waiting for a poll. Oh, you guys can't seem to come to a decision in the chat, so I'm going to put it to a poll now. Okay, do you want to go left, straight on, forwards, or stay where you are? And then I'm waiting for the chat results to come in. And so editing all of that out and then Fancy coming on board and being like, I can take off some of the workload for you. That's what you pay me for. I was like
Yeah.
really reluctant for a while, and then as soon as I was in a similar position, Kelly, I was just kind of forced. My hand was forced. I just didn't have the time to do anything anymore. Everything was like several weeks behind schedule, and I was like, all right, edit a couple of videos and we'll see. And she edited them, and they were perfectly fine. And I was like, oh, okay, yep, you can. That's you now. That's you. That's your job forever now. Thank you, Fancy. But yeah, it's such a relief to not have that much time spent on editing because it takes so much longer than you expect.
Yeah.
And even I was talking to the Legends of Avantris guys when I had them on for a shot, and they were talking about how they got their big break once they started doing short form content and like YouTube Shorts and TikToks and those sorts of things, and they said like people expect a 30-second YouTube short to take like a few minutes to edit, and it's like no, that's going to be most of your evening just on that one shot. It's what's the word? It's I can't remember. I can't think of what word it is, but it's prohibitive. It's prohibitively time consuming to do all of the editing yourself.
Yeah.
And eventually, if you get to any sort of a size where you're churning out the content that you guys are, you need people on board. So these editors just like sort of free. They do the freelance as and when it comes up, or are they doing enough work for you guys that it's kind of like a full time for them?
Between between our
Yeah,
two
go ahead.
editors, it's one full-time gig.
Right, yeah.
But neither of our two editors both of them have their other gigs that they do. So
Yeah.
it's been a bit of a divide and conquer situation. So one of our editors handles all of our actual play edits, and the other does all of our main series edits.
Right, yeah.
And for YouTube, and then both of them do shorts. So that's been a bit of a back and forth, but we find that keeps it well balanced with that. Um, it could always evolve over time, but for now it's been really good, and both of them are members of our team
Hmm.
for producing our actual play and everything like that. And so it really just spreads the workload amongst all those that are involved.
And what's the sort of process start to finish of one particular video, not your actual play, but for your main series? Like, what's who do you both come up with ideas and you have like an ideas document of like maybe we could do a video on
Yeah,
this, and then eventually something starts to
yeah.
evolve into being like this is meaty enough to make a video on.
We
So
we
in
we do it. Oh, go ahead, Kelly.
I was going to say in the early days, what it was is that Monty actually did most of the episode writing, and I did because I was doing all the editing. So that was kind of
Yeah,
the
the
divide
share. Yeah.
of labor. So Monty came up with most of the episodes. One of the things that I've really enjoyed is since passing off editing, we collaborate a lot more on the writing. We go to the studio 3 days a week, and we work from home 2 days a week. And the 3 days that we're in the studio, we always arrive on Tuesday. And the question is, what ideas do we have for videos that we can put on the list? And whatever ideas sound exciting that day, either ones that we've already put on our list or ones that we come up with that day, we start writing them and we write them together. So one of us will usually detail a script and the other one will go in and add their own voice and notes to them,
Yeah.
which I have found have actually helped the videos because
Mm,
we just shot this week and there was Monty wrote a script and again they're point form notes. But then I went over and as I was reading his point form notes, I was like, oh, I thought of something that I would want to say here. And I would add in a point form note that would be like a prompt for me to tell my
Yeah.
story or my idea. And so the writing's become a lot more collaborative, and I think that's one of the big
yeah.
benefits of passing off the editing.
And now we have more of our process where because we do have our editors, they need an outline.
Hmm.
Whereas before, if we just turned the cameras
Yeah.
on and started chatting, Kelly could figure it out. But now what we do is we'll put together an outline with our main talking points, and do a whole rehearsal of everything that we're going to talk through. Usually we end up going through the entire script two or three times.
Hmm.
Points get added, and of course once the cameras start rolling we inevitably
Oh yeah.
add more to it. But and then we throw the outline up on a teleprompter and we work through that and do the recording. And so usually it ends up being like the recording process of the video takes less than an hour, but it's
Right.
all the preparatory work
Everything. Yeah.
of
Yeah. Yeah. Everything
researching
takes
and
way
writing
longer.
and the discussion that's where the lion's share of it happens
Hmm.
now. And then it goes into editing afterwards, and then our editors will turn around a rough cut. We'll give them some notes, usually what to cut out.
Yeah.
And go back around again from there. And so for us, it's always been that balance of trying to find the right length. Like we I've always thought that like some of our videos tend towards the video essay length
Hmm.
rather
Right.
than like the short length. And so we've been experimenting more with trying to keep to more like the 22-minute TV episode format more
Right.
recently,
Right. Right.
and be a little bit more concise. And a lot of that has actually come down to, with the process of discussing the outline and talking about it out loud, even timing ourselves, going, "Oh, this is 2 episodes."
Yeah.
Or
Right.
I think even the other day, like Kelly was talking about an outline that he had of like a 10 things that you can do. And we sat down and we are like, five of these 10 things we could talk about individual, like just for
Yeah.
20 minutes in detail. And so that often becomes part of it is sometimes you realize that there's a topic, there's a secret topic within the broader topic
Right.
that
Yeah. I
actually
see what you're saying.
deserves more focus and conversation. And so sometimes and you can return to a topic that we visited before because it's like, oh well, this one specific thing we can actually drill down and get some really interesting information
Especially with the release
out
of
of
this
this.
new book
Yeah.
that goes into more details about this and this. Yeah, because with Wizards
Yeah.
churning more books out every year, they release like what feels like 16 new books a year, and so it's impossible.
Yeah.
I've got so many books, just like I've got bookshelves all along here that you might be able to see. All along here, I've got bookshelves, and it's D&D books galore. That's not even all of them, not even by half. And there's some of those that I've never opened because I get them and then I'm like, I'll get around to it. I'll get around
Yeah.
to opening Fizban's Treasury of Dragons at some point.
Yeah.
They're just
And
churning
it's-
out so much content, but it's great as content creators because it's like that we've always got a wealth of something we can talk about. We can talk about, oh, what did they change in Tarrasque and everything? What do we think about the legacy, the move away from like the legacy stuff and moving into is this sort of fluid? There's no additions kind of way that they're hoping to go with it. I really don't expect that that's actually going to be the case, by the way, because there's so many different companies have tried similar things in the past. Like Microsoft said the same about Windows 10, I think. It was like the last edition, the edition to ends all editions. It's just going to be incremental changes in future. And then
I mean, eventually you hit a point where you got to make like change is inevitable.
Yeah.
So you can't just add DLC all the time. You have to create
and then
something
eventually
new
they have to be like, and 6th edition. So yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
I think this one's. I think colloquially, a lot of people are going to refer to the one that's coming out later this year as like 5.5. Like I think in the future we'll be looking back on this one and just calling it 5.5.
Yeah, I mean, fifth has turned out to be one of the longest-lived editions of the game.
It's like 40
having
years or something, isn't it? No, it's like 10 years.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah. Having gone through, look at a lot of people forget how fast 3.5 came out after third edition, and that was a very there were things it invalidated your old books in a big way, and then there was a lot of content in those books that was just like super forgotten. In third edition, I have some they did these soft cover splat books. Like this was where fourth, the early third edition that had some like the early prestige classes in it, and basically all those books, the material in them ended up being reprinted in like when they started doing the complete arcane, complete scoundrel in 3.5, and then I think fourth edition came out 2008. Yeah, it was.
I think it was 2008 for 4th edition, 2014 for 5th, I think.
Yeah, right. So third edition basically lasted 2 years. 3.5 lasted 6.
Yeah.
Fourth edition lasted 6, and
5th edition's already at
fifth
10.
edition. Yeah, is it? Yeah. So, pretty different streak, and of course, we talk about the pace of the books that happened recently, but it was still nothing compared to the pace of the books that were coming out in third edition and fourth edition.
Right.
Like in third edition in 3.5, there was a new hardcover book being released by Wizards every single month.
That's insane.
Yeah.
Who keeps up with that? Who can afford to keep up with that? You
I
did
did.
Somehow.
I don't think you could afford it, but you did it anyway.
in no seriousness, I think we had in third edition we had 15 hardcover books that were made just for Eberron.
Oh my god.
Right, and I have them, right? They're what.
That's awesome.
And I don't think I have them all. I don't even think I have all the Eberron books that came out for third edition, right? The Forgotten Realms.
You weren't lying when you were saying you were supporting that bookshop. They saw Monty. They saw Monty coming and was like, "Here we go. We can eat today. We can." The bookshop owner calls his wife. He's like, "We're going out for fancy dinner tonight. Monty's on there's a new D&D book come out."
Yeah. There you go. But I think that there is a little bit of a yeah, the pace of releases. Uh, I think it speaks to like the different structure that probably exists at Wizards now,
Mm,
and a different philosophy towards the game. Because of course, like even during third and fourth edition, like the meta of character building was way faster
right.
than it was today. Like, people still talk about how, the Battlemaster fighter and the
Mm,
divination wizard are still top
mm,
dogs. But
yeah.
like from the beginning and end of the edition of those editions, what was powerful at the start of the edition
Right.
was way different from what was at the end. Even though, I like to bring up, people like to talk about how fourth edition was super balanced, but a lot of people forget that in the first week of fourth edition, there was a ranger character build that could solo Orcus in a single round of combat.
I don't know if that the range power build being too powerful, or is that Orcus being too weak? Because there's two possibilities there.
No,
Because I
no, it was definitely the ranger build was
right,
like was jacked.
because
Like it was.
I came
Yeah.
up with a way, an in game without game breaking or anything, rules is written way to defeat the Tarrasque at level 1 on your own in fifth edition. But that's mainly because the Tarrasque's so garbage in fifth edition.
How do you do that at level one?
At
Is
level
that just
one,
a
you are playing a flying race, so one of the Owlins or Aarakocra or something like that, because it has no flying speed, and you have Sacred Flame in whatever way you want to get Sacred Flame. Level 1 Cleric, for instance, because it's the Tarrasque's 5th edition's Tarrasque's dexterity is a 0. It's got a 0 on its dex save. And it has no regeneration. So you fly out of its range, you fly into its range and cast Sacred Flame, and then you fly back out of its range, and it
That's
fails its
that's
save
why
half the
Monty
time
and
and takes
I
damage.
we
I
think that Tarrasque should be more like Godzilla and have an energy blast
Yes, I did with
mouth
mine.
yeah.
attack.
I created my
Uh,
own Tarrasque that's actually like worthy of a challenge in 30, and it's got like regenerative abilities, and it's got like a solar beam thing, and it's got legendary actions and legendary lair actions, like, and being the Tarrasque is kind of, it burrows down into the earth and comes back out hundreds of years later. The earth is its lair, so whenever you're fighting
Yeah.
the Tarrasque wherever you are, it's got its lair actions, and it's got lair actions for like raining down acid rain, and it's gonna like make mud pools and stuff. It's so much more fun. I did a whole video
yeah,
about it years ago before I was doing my Twitch stream. I filmed a video for YouTube, and I had a 3 hour fight with. I got 4 of my friends together, and I made them all level 20 characters and fought the Tarrasque as written. And then we had the exact same characters with the same setup and same weapons and everything fight my version of the Tarrasque, and we filmed that, and then we compared
Nice.
them and stuff, and then lost every bit of the footage. Like, all of the footage got corrupt when I
Oh
put it onto my yeah.
no.
Oh, that's
Every bit of the
that's
footage
brutal.
got corrupt when I put
Yeah.
it on my computer, and I was like, well, maybe I'll film that again one day. And here we
Yeah.
are, like 5 years
Oh
later, and I
man.
still haven't gotten around to refilming it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, with the Tarrasque is a great case of like where Callie and I are going with our epic bosses that we're writing for Monsters of Drakkenheim, right? Because that came over a similar set of problems of like just the philosophy behind solo monsters and the way that they work in fifth edition, and our kind of like first principle behind it is like a lot of the most common advice you get when it's like, why wasn't my boss monster, why was it destroyed by the players? One of
Was
the
it
most
on its
common
own?
tips,
That's
yes,
why.
is was it
Because
on its
action
own.
economy.
But the counter example that I'll give is a party of heroes fighting against a single gigantic monster is iconic.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
we need to acknowledge that the rules actually need to support the
Yeah.
narrative idea of the players having a showdown against a single boss that doesn't need minions to help it. So
Which is
we need
why the balance of legendary actions came about in the first place. Like, mechanically speaking,
yeah.
legendary actions are designed to be like, oh, it gets mini turns between your turns, just try and help out the
Yes,
action economy.
yeah.
But
And
yeah,
for us,
oh,
go ahead,
go ahead.
Kelly. Yeah.
Oh, I was going to say the even with legendary creatures, we still think that the problem persists because yeah, they get actions between players' turns, but then some people are playing games at tables of 6 or 7
Yeah, and you've got
players,
3 legendary
and
actions.
it yeah, so you do
Two if
your
you're using the
attack
good ones.
and your
Yeah.
cool action, and then you're done, and then you get wailed on for 6 rounds. So,
Yeah.
just to plug our current Kickstarter. Yeah, we have a Kickstarter right now for a monster book, and one of the things that we are doing in that book is our epic bosses, and we're introducing a ton of epic bosses, all the way from CR8 epic bosses up to CR30 epic bosses. Not all
Nice.
the monsters are epic bosses, but we have a good handful of them. And some of the rules that we implemented for epic bosses is they completely scale to the size of the party. So instead of taking actions on their turn, they only take actions after
I love that.
every player character. Their hit points also, they have a set amount of hit points and then plus a certain amount per player character.
Nice.
So
Yeah,
if you have a party of 3 or a party of 6, it's still going to be
that's
the
smart.
same level of difficulty for the
Yeah.
combat encounter.
And then epic, instead of legendary resistance, our epic bosses have epic resistance. We think that legendary resistance is just not fun
Yeah,
because
it's
it,
just
it
that
sucks.
it's
It's
the
a
thing
no.
of playing with a yeah, you're playing with your friend in the schoolyard, and you go pow pow, and then your friend goes I'm bulletproof, and you're like, oh, I got a
Yeah,
flamethrower, and they go, no, I'm fireproof, and they're just like noping everything you're doing, and you're like, oh, big
yeah,
fucking dope ass spell, level 7 spell. He failed. Yes. Okay, so he's gonna take. No, actually, he's not gonna take anything because he's gonna just. I just say no. It's like,
yeah,
I
Yeah.
don't like.
Yeah.
I understand the balance reason for it. Like, if you are against a single creature, you don't want them to die because they failed a single save on a stunning strike or something. But yeah, I've done things differently. How do you do your epic resistances?
Well, basically, epic resistance is an action that the that epic bosses can take, and they're allowed to take this action under any circumstances. So they're allowed to use it even when they're incapacitated,
Incapacitated, right?
stunned,
Yeah.
or and even it goes as far as saying they can always use this action even if their game statistics have been replaced by something else.
Right. Yeah.
So if they get polymorph,
Yeah. I
basically.
forget polymorph.
And epic resistance basically says they choose one condition or spell or anything affecting them, roll a d20 on an 11 or higher, it's over. So the
Right.
practical implementation of this is that if you use hold monster on an epic boss, it will have to spend its epic actions to
Yeah.
get out of hold monster.
Yeah.
It will eventually get out because it's always got a 50-50 shot
50-50
of
chance.
getting out,
Yeah.
but your stunning, your incapacitating effects will deny it a couple actions, and with the amount of damage that epic bosses can do
Yeah.
on
Yeah.
their turns,
Denying it an action's a real
yeah,
pain.
yeah,
And you never felt like,
y-
kind of wasted my spell, didn't get anything for it.
yeah.
You're like, no, you
The,
stopped him for a round.
and because you'll appreciate this as a math person, is that basically our epic bosses have been our math is dialed in. The math that we're dialing in for the epic bosses is that unless the player characters do something to make this not happen, an epic boss TPKs a party in 3 rounds.
Right, yeah.
Yeah. So the player, if you kill it in 3 rounds, you're good. And
Yeah.
usually what's happened in most of our playtests is usually the result of it is that because the players inevitably do something, usually most of our epic boss battles last between 3 and 5 rounds, which means they're
Yeah,
really
yeah.
snappy. And it usually ends up with someone on the ground bleeding out unconscious, and the rest of the party pretty badly beat up, which is a really satisfying place. Like
Yes,
so
yeah.
so many times in our playtest games that we've run with our epic bosses, the last round is this weird round where it's like, are we going to TPK?
Yeah,
And
is this close? Like, you want it to get down to the balance of, like, I don't know if we're gonna die here.
yeah, and then but nobody does.
Because
And for
if
us,
it's too much one way or another, the
yeah,
players are like, even if it's like too obviously a TPK, the drama is removed somewhat because the players are like, well, we've got no option, we've got to run. Like,
yeah,
it's not like
yeah.
a dramatic choice to be made every round of like, do we run, do we not? If it is coming down to the point of like, oh no, I think we've got this. I think we could still take it, but we might TPK. Then they're going like, do I stick around? Do we not?
It's such a narrow sweet spot, but
Oh yeah,
that's what we've really tried to do with all of our epic bosses, is really zero in on that ultimate point of tension, because that's what you want from a boss battle, right?
yeah,
Like that's we want to have that feeling of like, oh, this could be the end.
yeah,
This could be it. But then that desperate moment of victory. And so when the more we've like dialed in that is the sweet spot that we're aiming for, the more it's actually clarified the feeling that we want all these monsters to have. And it's been working out so far. There's a couple that have been some interesting challenges to figure out
It's
exactly.
man, it's hella difficult to write those because I can balance a fight on the fly really easily. Like I don't tend to give my monsters a set hit points. I give them like a window of hit points. And then like if the battle has been slogging on and like they're only losing because they're just bad rolls and bad luck on their side, but they've been making good choices, they get the monster to the lower of that window of HP, then I'm like, and you kill it, well done. Or if it's like narratively important because the monster is he's the big bad guy of one of their backstories, for instance, then I'm going to wait until it comes back around to their turn, they get the kill on him. So tend to give them like a window of hit points, so I can balance things that way. I also tend to give my monsters like one huge ability that I'm not going to use unless they start out swinging. Like if the players do everything right and they get the drop on him, and suddenly this guy's starting out at half health already, then he's got this big thing to sort of balance the fight again, make it feel as epic as I wanted it to be. So I've got all sorts of like tricks and tips that I can use when I'm running the game. But writing a stat block and trying to account for all that stuff and trying to account for the different things of like the challenge rating system being like, yes, a party of this many players at this level should find this a challenging fight if they're on full health and they have no magic weapons. But what if they're not on full health, but they do have magic weapons, and like the number of different possible feats and subclasses and multi-classing combinations for different power levels, combined with like the different style of play. Some people are real min-maxers and optimizers, and other people are just role players, and they don't really use their abilities to the best of their ability. Like, how the hell do you do the math on trying to balance those things?
The answer to that is that basically you have to take challenge rating for what it is, and not try to reinvent the wheel with it when you're writing the book. So when we look at when we try to dial in a challenge rating on a monster, is this monster close to other monsters of its challenge rating that are in the official material? And then you have to kind of trust the dungeon master to know, like, actually my 8th level party is super strong, so I'm gonna bump things up, because the reality of it is that the character builds, what that's actually effectively doing is it's making like a very well min-maxed 7th level party is actually a level 10 party. In all real metrics, right? And then it's the choice that you have to make as a DM. It's like, am I going to throw the level 10 challenges at them, or I'm going to let them just cakewalk everything? So that's got to be a question.
It comes down to dungeon master experience, doesn't it? Eventually, you just have to be like, look, you need to have thrown enough monsters at them. Hopefully, you have by the time they're level 7. So like you've gotten a feeling for how they like to play and how powerful they are and whether they're optimizers and stuff.
And that's why the general guidance that we use with the epic bosses is that you use an epic boss that is generally anywhere from 30% to 50% challenge rating higher. So like a level 8 party fights a CR12 epic boss.
Yeah, right. I love I love the whole idea of the epic bosses and stuff, and I do a very similar thing with my legendary resistances since having the same issues with it. I moved my legendary resistance from being just a thing they do when they make a save to a legendary action. So all of my anything with a legendary action, any legendary monster, gets the legendary action option of you can spend a legendary action point to reroll a save. It's not like an automatic just fail. It's like, okay, I failed on my turn, and he's going to be failed until the end of your next turn, and then he's going to spend a legendary action to try this save again, and he might fail again, and so like he could be failing for an entire round, but he is using his legendary actions to reroll the save each time.
It's just so much more fun for the players. Like,
so even if they get one round of success because of their spell, at least they don't feel like their spell was entirely wasted.
Exactly.
When you're fighting the big boss, one round of success is like better than like you could hope for. Really, negating the boss doing 30 to 60 damage to your party is probably what's going to save the day. So that's in our epic boss battles, that hold monster just save the party from a TPK. So even though it may not feel like
because he no longer had his action to do his breath weapon attack or his whatever, or his summon other creatures and all this other stuff that they could have done. So tell me about sorry, go on, Monty.
No, I was just saying some of our epic bosses have combo moves where they have to do
Oh
a
right,
couple
yeah,
epic actions in succession.
nice.
So stunning them for just one epic action can
Yeah,
break that entire chain. Yeah.
I have a similar thing when I homebrewed the T Rex. I had a member of my community and one of my mods, Ajo. She's a huge dinosaur nerd, and she came and joined me for a stream one day when we kind of went through some of the dinosaur beast stat blocks and tried to fix them, because there's the stat blocks of monsters in general in D&D, as you well know, having created an entire supplement of more monsters, more interesting and epic monsters. The stat blocks in fifth edition leave a lot to be desired, given that the vast majority of them are here's its hit points, here's a claw attack. That's all. That's all
Yeah.
you get. And maybe the
And,
claw attack
and,
is flavored as a bite attack, but it's still just
yeah.
the same. Here's an attack and some hit points.
And the flip side of it is that well, we all want our monsters to be more than just a bag of hit points.
Yeah,
There's also a lot of abilities. Like we also want their abilities to be more than just giving players disadvantage
yeah.
and we don't want monster stat blocks that are so complicated, that are
Mm-hmm.
so complex that
That you're
it's
never going
too
to
much
use any of the
mental.
stuff in the
Yeah,
fights.
yeah, exactly. So it
This
is a
this one's
very
never going to come
delicate.
up because it's always going to be
Yeah,
better to just do this claw attack and whatever.
yeah, yeah.
But yeah, when I was doing this stream of like fixing the dinosaur stat blocks, we I was talking to Ajo about the T Rex and stuff and how they would have actually likely hunted and stuff, and she goes, "There's no chance in hell that they ever use their tail as a weapon. They're just not designed for it. They're not like one of those ones with a big freaking mace on the end of the tail. It's not.
Yeah.
They wouldn't have used it. So take the tail attack out. What they would do is they'd use their size. They're an enormous hunter, and they would grab the thing and like press it down to the ground, and then they would bite it and tear it. Like most of the time, they'd tear it. And so my T-Rex, you were just mentioning like combo moves. It has a similar thing where it has like a stomp attack, and a bite attack. And if it does stomp you, then you have to succeed a strength save or be pushed prone. And then if you are prone, it can make a bite attack. And only if it's got you prone and you are grappled under its foot and it makes a bite attack, then it has another attack that it can do called tear, and it just does a shit ton of damage. And it's like if this damage reduces you to 0, you're torn in half, and there's no death saves. Like you're just torn
Nice.
straight in two.
Yeah.
And
We
it made the T-Rex
just
like a really powerful monster.
It's
I
just gonna
love
remind
that.
you why you don't skip leg day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's so funny. Like that exact formula is what we just designed a monster. We revamped our executioner, one of the famous monsters from our show.
Nice.
And so it has a guillotine blade, and it's a giant robotic executioner.
Love it.
Construct. I shouldn't say robotic. It's a construct. It's magically robotic.
Yeah.
But its whole thing is that it throws ghostly chains on you as one action. Then
Yeah.
it drags you to the ground as a second action. So now you're prone.
Yeah.
And then it walks up to you and it slams the guillotine blade down. And it needs those three actions to
Yeah.
do that. So first you're wrapped up, then you're prone, then you're getting your head chopped off. It doesn't auto kill you. It has a small chance. You roll a d20, and on a 1, it auto kills you.
Oh, okay.
Because it takes
Yeah,
three
it
actions
takes-
to get there, and
yeah.
you have a chance to break out of the chains. Your friends can break you out. There's a lot going on there, but I love the whole it's almost like a flag post being like that person's wrapped up in chains. You have
You're gonna die. You have 3 rounds
turns.
left, and then you put a big timer up,
Yeah.
and you're like, you've got 3 rounds to get out of this, or you might die. And then 2
The-
rounds to get
the-
out
the-
of this. So yeah.
Yeah, the
Attention.
execution is a really interesting case with our epic bosses because we're actually writing it to be unkillable. And so
nice.
the point of the point of the executioner is to escape and survive, not to defeat it. And so we've been writing it as an epic boss that scales no matter what level party is fighting it. And that also it's the point of facing it is to escape and to get away rather than to actually defeat it. And so we've done fun things with the scaling on that where its damage is based on the player character's level and based on their actual hit points, so that it gives you no matter if you're level 5 or level 15, you have kind of the same window of opportunity to escape from it. The higher level characters are going to have a couple more tools in their toolbox, and so they can be a little bit more reckless. The lower level characters they're really gonna have
They
to just
probably can't even
run.
hurt it.
I created a similar monster for a home game once where they were fighting like a training dummy essentially, and the training dummy started out like at level 1 and was just like did a couple of attacks, and then the more damage you do to it, the more attacks you can do on it on a single round. Like its reaction was to go, "Oh, you just did 2 attacks on me on a round. I'll up my attacks per round to meet you."
Oh, that's
And
fun.
then the more damage you were doing, it was like, "Oh, I started out doing a D4 damage with you, but now I'm gonna." And it was like a construct training dummy that could fight back and stuff. And so every time like it got round to the top of the round, I would say, that you notice as the construct says increasing difficulty, and then suddenly it's got 3 attacks per round, or it's doing like a D10 with each attack instead of a D4. It was a lot of fun, and it really did like help the party go, oh damn, oh we got to take this thing down quick because it's getting harder and harder to kill every round. So tell me about Monsters of Drakkenheim. How did it come about, and tell me more about the project and the idea for the Kickstarter and everything.
Monsters of Drakkenheim, so this is going to be our third book, and it just kind of felt like the right next step for us. So our first book, Dungeons of Drakkenheim, was an adventure set in the world of Drakkenheim, which is Monty and my homebrew setting. Uh, Drakkenheim is the name of the capital city of the nation of Westamar, which was struck by an eldritch storm of meteors that all rained down on the city. One giant one landing in one of in like the center of the city. The meteor was made of a magical rock called delirium that infects and contaminates, sort of turning Drakkenheim into fantasy Chernobyl
Right.
situation there. We took a lot of notes from H.P. Lovecraft
Yeah.
and Fallout and things like that, and so everything in the city mutated and transformed. And the campaign book, our first book, was about the adventure going back into the city to decide what you were going to do to try to help the city. There were 5 rival factions. You were deciding who you were going to ally with or go up against.
Nice.
The second book, which was Sebastian Crow's Guide to Drakkenheim, a lot of people really loved the world of Drakkenheim and wanted to know more about the wider
Mm-hmm.
world. So the second book introduced a brand new class called the Apothecary, inspired by our setting, which is sort of fantasy science fiction themed,
Mm-hmm.
with like classics like Frankenstein or
Yeah.
Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, those sort of
Yeah.
vibes. We introduced new subclasses based on our setting and a whole bunch of lore. Now we're at our third book, and it seemed appropriate to do a monster book. A lot of people have been watching our show, and when we always get the question, what are the stat blocks that Monty was using? Because he always twists the monsters that he uses into something new.
Mm-hmm.
And so we decided now is a good time to actually make the stat blocks and show off the cool abilities and the cool effects that we've been making up for our show. And we wanted it to be more than just a monster book, so it's got over 150 new monsters,
Mm-hmm.
including several epic bosses, but also each monster comes complete with lore. So if you are interested in the world of Drakkenheim, there's
Right.
going to be a bunch of lore to say here's where the monsters come from, here's what they do. Really kind of up the lore and the setting, but also every monster has artwork, character personality traits, combat tactics for DMs to be like, oh, here's how I should be using it in combat, as
Mm.
well as a list of a rollable table on each monster on what players can learn about the monster. So we
Oh,
have this new
nice.
system that a player can spend an action to roll an
Reaction.
investigation reaction, right?
Reaction.
To roll an investigation or a survival. Is it
It's
investigation or perception?
it's just
Sometimes
investigation,
survivals.
but
Okay,
it's just investigation, but you get advantage based on the monster's creature type and your knowledge skills.
Right.
right. Um, and then on top of all of that, we also introduced new conditions. So we decided that the game needed more conditions. Our big inspiration here was
Because so many of them are just you can't do anything on your turn, and that's
yeah,
not fun for a
and
player.
that's boring. So
Yeah.
another design principle for us was we didn't want monsters that stunned or incapacitated players because
Yeah,
it's
I try to
boring to be
avoid those
stunned
too.
as a player. So
And it's a
we
one
made
way
new
thing. Like
conditions.
for a player, stunning the big bad guy, stunning the DM's monsters is really fun, and like you don't want to
Yeah,
take the stun condition out completely. Because as a dungeon master, I've generally got a lot of things, or even if a lot of creatures, and if this guy can't do anything on his turn, fine, these two can. And even if I am just going solo monster, as we were discussing with legendary actions and stuff, there's ways to get around it that the players just don't have access to. But what I do try to
yeah,
stay away, like I've got a lot of things I'm playing with as the dungeon master. You've only got one character you're playing with as the player, so I don't want to.
yeah.
I don't want to play the skipper turn card in like an Uno skipper turn. That's just not good game design.
Yeah, so I'll give an example. We tried to make a bunch of conditions that involved player choice. So one of my favorites that we're using a ton in this book is the burning condition. And the burning is actually a variable condition. So it's burning X. And X you put in the amount of D whatever that you're burning for. So a bunch of monsters can, and there's burning fire, burning radiant, burning acid, burning necrotic. You can kind of do burning with anything. Mostly fire, but you
Freezer
play around
burn,
with it.
burning cold.
I mean, we do have a frozen condition as well. But so the way that burning works, though, is if you're hit with like a fiery attack, you might get burning 4d6. That now means that on your turn, you are burning and you have to spend an action to put out the fire. Or you can have another player could spend an action to put out a fire on somebody else. We also say that up to the DM's discretion, if the player does something that would conceivably stop burning, like jump in a lake,
Yeah,
that would end the condition as well. If their turn ends and they haven't stopped the condition, they take 46 damage. And that just keeps going until they put it out. What's great about this, though, is we've used this in playtest, and players sometimes will just be like, I got more important things to do on my turn.
yeah,
I'm at full hit points. I'm going to stay on fire.
yeah.
But it eats away at you. And so eventually they're like, I should probably spend my turn putting out this fire.
I should probably put this fire right now. You've
Yeah.
been on
So,
fire
so
for
it's about making that
24
choice.
seconds.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and ironically, when you spend your action to put out the fire, you just got denied your action. Like you were effectively
Yeah.
incapacitated for that
Yeah,
turn.
yeah.
But it's weird how it
But it
doesn't
doesn't feel like it.
feel like that.
Yeah, because you've got some
Yeah.
sort of benefit from doing so. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's the same reason why when people are unconscious in my games nowadays, I'm not making them go unconscious. Like if you're down to 0 hit points and dying, you're still conscious and able to like crawl and things in my games, because I just decided having you being able to do something. I even give my players the option of like when you're on 0 hit points and dying, you can choose to still take an action, but doing so gives you an automatic fail on one of your death saves. So like you can have that last stand moment if you want. You can be like, I haven't failed any death saves yet. I think it's more important that I attack this guy, or that I help my friend, or I take the heal somebody
I
else.
like that rule. That's fun.
Yeah, and it keeps people involved during death saving throws. And somebody took that just yesterday, just the day before yesterday, when I was playing a game, and the healer used an action to heal himself, and you think, oh well, he's failed a death save, but he's healing himself. But that's because in my games, when you do fail a death save, you also take a lingering injury, and so he healed himself, but came back with like internal abrasions, which gives him disadvantage on con saves and things. So he still got a negative from going down and taking an action and stuff.
Interesting. Yeah.
Awesome.
So we tried to push the envelope there, and then in addition to that, every monster also has the body parts that you can harvest from them to make
I love
magic
that.
items.
Yeah, I love that. Monster
and
Hunter-esque.
Yeah, and so we were really inspired by things like Tears of the Kingdom and survival crafting games like Valheim, and so we really wanted a. We knew that we wanted to do crafting, but what we wanted to do differently, and this comes back to first principles, is we play very action-oriented games. In our campaigns, players do not get downtime very often, and when they do, it's maybe a couple days off.
Yeah.
And so we wanted to do a crafting system that was not reliant on downtime, wasn't reliant on gold piece costs, it didn't rely on skill checks or randomness.
Right.
And so we have our very straightforward harvesting system is that at the end of an encounter, each player character can harvest one part from the monsters that are there, and it's one part regardless of how many monsters there are. We kind of have a bit of a narrative conceit of like it's one part because that zeroes out like the fact
Yeah.
that you ruined some things or things got damaged in battle. So if you kill one dragon, everybody can take one thing from it. If you fought, 10 trolls, it's still one part per person.
Yeah.
And then we just give recipes for every magic item in the game. And all the new magic items that we've made, and the recipes will call for a monster part from a monster of this creature type of this challenge rating or higher.
Yeah, right.
Some of the higher end magic items, the legendary and very rare ones, get really specific. So they might say it's gotta be from an ancient dragon, or this has to come from a troll, or this must come from a vampire.
Yeah.
But otherwise, we use broad categories so that you can use lots of different parts for different items. And we've tried to make it all very narrative focused and make it make sense in the best ways that we can. So making a scroll is as simple as making vellum from the hide from a monster and collecting the fluid from a monster, whether that's water from a water elemental or like the ichor from some sort of aberration or the blood from a dragon, and then you use the blood to make the ink, and the hide becomes vellum. There's your scroll.
You got a scroll. Yeah, very cool.
Yeah.
Much better than the spend 48 weeks of downtime and 250,000 gold pieces, and you've got a single level 9 scroll, which you can then you can then sell for less than half of what you actually paid to make it.
Yeah. Our rule is did the blood and the vellum come from a monster that was challenge rating 18?
Yeah.
Then you can make a level 9 scroll.
Yeah, that's
using
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that stuff. So at what point did you go like, hey, we're making a book about monsters, we also have to include this entirely other kind of crafting? Because when you sat down, I imagine it was like, oh, we're going to make stat blocks for monsters, and then at some point you're like, and now we have to come up with like the crafting system and everything else that we're going to put in.
The true answer to that is one thing that I'm always thinking of when we're sitting down to write a new book is what are the catchphrases that would be used. I mean, marketing is a part of the business.
Yeah.
And so I knew that like if you just say we're making a monster book, that's one thing, but it's like, okay, well, we need more than just a monster book. So what is this monster book going to include? That's something new, something unique, and something exciting.
Yeah.
And the crafting system fell into our laps because both Monty and I literally, when we were conceptualizing the book, we're playing Valheim together and playing Tears of the Kingdom separately. And I was sitting in Tears of the Kingdom, attaching a bokoblin horn to my sword to make a better sword. And I was like, why can't I do this in D&D? And I remember bursting into the studio that week being like, Monty, we need to make a crafting system. Because it's going to sound really cool if we say we're making a crafting system.
Yeah.
And I want it inspired by Tears of the Kingdom and Valheim and Monster Hunter. And so we kind of just thought, we needed to do more than just monsters, which is why when we wrote down the list, it was like, all right, we want to make new conditions. We want to do a crafting system. We want lore, layers, and loot. And we want a bunch of new monsters. So it all fed into here's our list of cool things that this book can have in it.
And the kind of the conceit, and this is where the inspiration from things like Valheim and survival crafting games comes to play, is that the players do have to bring the items to a crafting workshop to build the item. And what we do is we say the workshops actually have a rarity, and the rarity of the workshop corresponds to the rarity of the items you can make there.
Right.
So an uncommon workshop might just be like a very like a high quality blacksmith forge in a city. That'll let you make your uncommon items. But if you want to make a rare item, you might need to go to a proper
a quest. Yeah, you need to find a guy who knows this thing and go and find the. Yeah, it's long theorized that there's a legendary workshop deep in the heart of a volcano underneath the fire giant's body.
Words right out of our mouths, and so then the players either have to go on a quest to seek it out, or in some cases, one of the conceits of the system is that the players don't need to provide mundane materials. So like. One of the things that I just don't think you're ever going to make fun in a role-playing game is mining for ore and smelting that ore. That works.
Even though that is ridiculously fun in Minecraft, and you can spend hours just mining, and you're like, why is this so much fun?
Totally, but it's never going to work.
It's not going to work in a TTRPG.
Yeah,
no.
It's just not. So the workshop is what provides the mundane materials, but then the dungeon master can say, "Oh, the workshop's out of supplies. here, like, so for example, you arrive at the dwarven forge,
Yeah.
and the dwarves say, well, the iron mine has been taken over by kobolds.
Yeah.
So in order to make anything here, go clear out the mine so we have the source of iron, and
Yeah.
then we're all good to go. And so we wanted to just abstract that stuff because we've there's been a lot of really cool crafting systems that have been made for 5e. Some people have done some really great work doing like the detailed systems that are like, yes, the players are going to go mining, and it's like, this is how many bars of iron you need, and this is how many like exactly how much
Yeah.
like of this material you need. And we just felt that like that was too much bookkeeping for us. We wanted something that evoked the fun of those things, but didn't get into like the grindiness that video game
Yeah.
crafting tends to have.
Yeah.
And that didn't require that kind of bookkeeping on the back end of things, and instead just abstracted all that, because some systems kind of mask that by having dice rolls like cause you to waste materials, and
Yeah.
that, and we just didn't want to have any of that behind the scenes sort of
Yeah,
stuff.
that's fair enough.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fair enough. It really early game. I wanted to come up with some kind of brewing mechanics for my own game because they just didn't exist in the game, and I found some people were wanting to like make potions and poisons and things, and there was no major interesting rules around it. And I came up with a whole brewing system. And I still use it today, but something has always kind of irked me about it. I'm still like, it doesn't feel quite right. And I think it is the element of like, I included like tables of if you roll poorly, you just waste your ingredients. And I think it's those elements that I'm like, I don't know if that's fun. I don't know if that's fun for the players to waste ingredients that they've just gone foraging for and stuff.
Totally. And the flip side of it is a lot of those things exist because a lot of crafting systems are crushed under the weight of, what if the players decide to do capitalism?
Yes, right. Yeah.
And so we're very explicit. We just say, come out at the very beginning. The rule of this crafting system is no capitalism allowed. The players are allowed to use this system to make items for themselves to go on adventures, but this is not a crafting system that you use in your game if your players want to do that whole, we're going to go make magic items and then sell them.
Yeah.
Don't use these rules for that. That's not what they're designed to do. We're very clear and explicit. That's not what they're for.
Yeah,
and so rather than having to make our system bend over backwards to account for that, which is essentially which essentially I think is like doing the meta analysis of crafting systems. That's generally why most crafting systems suck. Because most crafting systems are trying to address the problem of what happens if the players exploit the system.
Yeah, if the crafting's this easy, then why isn't the market flooded with these magic items?
Yeah,
it's like,
and so
because it's not an economy simulator.
Yeah, is that this crafting system is not an economy simulator. Don't use it for that.
Yeah.
This is for the players to have fun with, and so we focused on that element, and just are very clear. It's not what this is for. The kind of the side conceit of it is that if you need more reasons for that, we've got a couple of reasons that are narrative that kind of make sense for those who feel they need that. But for us, from the design perspective, it's more, no, during session 0, you say, hey, everyone, do you want to use these rules? And they're like, wow, these sound really awesome. Okay, so the deal is you get to use these rules
You're not
as
selling
long
these
as you
things.
don't. Yeah.
We're not going to retire to be merchants in this game. We're adventurers.
Yeah.
So
we might. No, go ahead.
So much still to discuss, but I don't want to keep you past the 2 hours I told you. So I want to get on to talking about sort of the future of Dungeons and Dragons, future of Dungeon Dudes. Sorry. But before we move on from Monsters of Drakkenheim, I just wanted to reference the deal you have with D&D Beyond, getting the monsters actually usable in D&D Beyond, because that's amazing.
Yeah.
Like, how did that come about, and what can you tell us more about that?
That was kind of
publisher magic.
Yeah, that was luck and really good teams at Ghostfire Gaming. They've been negotiating with the D&D Beyond team for a while, and we were really, really lucky to get our first book to be the second third-party book ever to be on D&D Beyond.
After Critical Role, was it? Like
after Critical Role,
right there behind Critical Role, and just like, yep, you can use our content on like officially in D&D Beyond now. It's one of the links. So, if you are going into character creations and stuff, it's got like toggleable links, and it says use content from, and it's got all the different third-party content.
Yeah, and so Drakkenheim is on there, and we We told them that we had a third Kickstarter coming. Our second book is still not on D&D Beyond. We get that question a lot. It has a brand new class and a few other things in it that are much more complicated. So hopefully that goes on in the future. But the third book is a bunch of monsters, and we told them that we were doing it, and we said any chance that we can be the first ever Kickstarter to say right when we launch the Kickstarter that we have the option to integrate with D&D Beyond, and they gave us the green light, and
That's
so we
amazing.
got to be the first ever.
And so like, how does it work out that the moment the Kickstarter ends, the people can use the as soon as it's being
Not
fulfilled,
quite.
people can.
No, yeah, it'll be
We're still
fulfillment.
writing. Yeah,
You're still
as soon
writing
as
it, of course.
fulfillment, yeah, as soon as the manuscript's handed in, and well, not so much the manuscript, as soon as we have like the final PDF version of the
yeah.
book, it'll be probably available shortly after that
As soon
on
as,
D&D
'cause
Beyond.
it'll take actually programming the monsters into the.
Yeah,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
you do have the
exactly.
option
That's
when
amazing.
you are backing the Kickstarter, you can choose to get the D&D Beyond version, and then as soon as that PDF is available, you'll get the PDF version, and then you'll shortly after that get your link to download the
D&D
D&D Beyond version and that.
And then from that point, as long as you've toggled it on, you can search for particular monsters of challenge ratings, and yours will be in there in the list of monsters.
Yeah.
Which is amazing. That's really epic, and it's one of the major selling points for me for back in the Kickstarter was hearing that and going, oh yeah, absolutely, because I don't go through books anymore. It's all on D&D Beyond. So like if the monsters are on D&D Beyond, I'm using them. And
Yeah.
my desire for better and better monsters every time will help me to not have to homebrew them every time myself. That's one of the main reasons I was like, yep, backing, yes please. I want better monsters. So we're going to chat sort of about the future of Dungeon Dudes and everything. I just want to remind people before we get into that topic. I am reading the chat. I get to questions at the end. So if you do have questions for me or Kelly or Monty, you can redeem a channel point redemption of ask me a D&D question, and it goes into the redemptions list, and then I can get through all the questions all at once at the very end. So ask your questions, redeem them so I don't lose them, and we'll get to your questions at the end. So let's talk future. Sort of, we'll start with sort of near future, like what's in the immediate few months coming, and then we'll talk sort of blue sky after that, like where do you hope to be in 5-10 years, whatever.
Yeah. Finishing this book,
Yeah.
and
That's the next
and our Drakkenheim campaign is approaching the final arcs of it.
Oh, nice.
The characters are currently level 17, so the goal is to take it to level 20, and then that will be where we will close out the original Drakkenheim actual play campaign.
And you say that's been going 5 years?
Yeah.
It's a big
It's a saga.
It is. It's going to be up over 200 episodes, which is going to be a huge thing to look through. So for future, it's been awesome. Yeah. For future actual play stuff, we've been talking about what we might want to do for our next campaign that we do after Drakkenheim.
Mm-hmm.
That's on the horizon. We've been conceptualizing ideas, but we're still keeping it a bit of a secret what that's going to be.
Nice. Yeah, I feel you. Like the Vive la Dirt League campaign that I'm running has been going for 4 years now. We only film, like, because we're doing like comedy half-hour episodes of it. We only film every like 6 weeks or so, and so we're up to episode 178 I think went up yesterday, but it's like half-hour episodes, and even if it's half-hour episodes, people come in new to it and go 178 episodes, no thanks, like that's too much to catch up on. And so we included like some recap episodes that you can watch the recaps and then join in at episode 60 or whatever.
Yeah, we should have been doing that for a long time.
Yeah, onboarding is one of the biggest problems for like once you've been doing an actual play for anything more than 10 episodes, especially if your actual play is like 2 hours an episode or 4 hours an episode. It's like you're not getting new players involved in that campaign after that many. So I think like onboarding summaries and recaps are a pretty important way to get people involved. So your focus is on obviously finishing the Kickstarter and completing all of the goals. What level do you like to go into a Kickstarter already done? Like how much do you already write before even starting the Kickstarter versus how much you've got left to fulfill after the Kickstarter's done?
Usually we in the past we've actually been fully finished the manuscript before the Kickstarter goes live.
Right.
In this particular instance, monsters are a lot of fiddly bits that have a lot of back and forth, and Monty and I had a lot of life things that just caused us
Hmm.
to have to take a few months off of writing. So this time around, we by the time the Kickstarter launched, we were in a pretty good place. We had the entire conceptual outline of the book finished. So all of the chapter headings, all of the sections, the roots of all of those chapters were there, and probably about 60 monsters were finished.
Right.
Um, and so now we're kind of just we've finalized some of the rules and the guidelines for like the crafting
Hmm.
system. And now with the Kickstarter live, like
Yeah.
we're already probably at over 120 monsters finished.
Nice.
And we still have more to write, but it's starting to come together. I think the last
Yeah.
little bit's going to be tying it all and weaving it all together.
A lot with monster design is outlining them as well and then
Mm.
fleshing out those outlines. So going into the project, all the monsters were outlined. We knew what we wanted to do for every creature and what their general
Right.
idea was going to be, right? And with a lot of the monster design process, the big part of what happens with monsters is play testing. And
Yeah.
so we knew that there was a that even with like the stat blocks that the preview stat blocks we've been releasing, we've told a lot of people like look at the damage numbers, the AC, the saving throws,
Mm.
the attack bonuses, the challenge ratings. These are all subject to change because when it does come to monster design, you do need the playtesting feedback to know whether you've got the numbers dialed in the right place
Yeah.
or not. So those are all things that we expect to change. Whereas it's more about making sure like do we have the wording? Do we have the lore written? Do we have all those all the kind of the more the fluffy part of it?
Yeah.
Because so it's this weird sort of structure where it's like you have to do a whole bunch of conceptual work, and then all of a sudden that conceptual work looks very nebulous, very nebulous,
Mm.
and then there's kind of this fire phase where it just all of a sudden crystallizes into its fully formed shape that I especially find for the writing that Kelly and I do as a writing team. That's often the way our what happens is like we have this year-long period of big ideas, conceptual phases, point form writings, outlining, doing all these things. And then in the span of about four to like about 2 to 4 months, it will all just sort of really get pulled in and the big picture of the whole thing suddenly forms.
Yeah.
So like, because we've been working on this book conceptually for since really 2022, and a lot of these ideas were starting to get developed, like really started a lot of the development
Hmm.
because especially with it when it comes to things like the conditions and the epic boss rules and the crafting system, all that work had to be done really early, and then once you find your formulas you can go, okay, well, here's the monster where I'm plugging this in, and now I understand those things, and these things now all get built, and all of a sudden you're like, oh, I wrote two monsters in a day, and here they are. So there's all this back and forth in the process.
Yeah. Yeah. Man, it's a lot of work, isn't it? Like, how? So I imagine the first two books were similar amounts of work, and so this one was less daunting because you already knew what sort of process to expect. Like, or was it more daunting because you're like, oh man, I know how much work the first two were, and we're embarking on the same marathon again.
You know, what's interesting is as much as we think we know, every book is its own challenge because
Right.
the first book was an adventure book.
Yeah.
And after that, I was like, well, now I know how to write a book. But the second book was a lore and player-facing book,
Right. Right.
which was a whole different thing. And then the third book is a monster book. And again, I'm like, this is a new format. I'm doing new things. So we know what it takes to write a book. Luckily, at this point, Monty and I have really solidified where our strengths and weaknesses are.
Yeah.
Um, I will write out, like Monty and I will both be writing out sections and we'll purposely leave blanks, being like, oh, that's a section that I know Monty, or Monty will leave
Monty's got
certain
this one.
sections
Yeah.
blank. Yeah, being like Kelly's better at this stuff. So, one thing that Monty always said that I didn't even realize, Monty leaves personality traits, ideals, bonds, and flaws blank all the time
Right.
because I come up with them really, really quickly.
Right.
Meanwhile, I will write descriptive flavor text
Mm-hmm.
and pass it to Monty and be like, please make this good. And he'll take what I wrote and make it sound much better than I did.
Right.
So those are like the little things that we've learned working together. Is like I know when to pass something to Monty and be like, "You can make this better," and he passes something to me and
Yeah.
he's like, "You can make this better." And so that's kind of one of the benefits that we've reached now on book three. But each one is its own challenge.
Yeah. And then next you'll be like, what have we not done? Do a completely different book again, like a spell book or
Yeah.
something. All brand new spells, over a thousand new spells. Yeah.
And I mean, for us, this is the big benefit of working with a publisher is that Kelly and I get to put 100% of our energy into
Right,
the
yeah.
creative and the development. We get to work with our amazing layout editor and art director and interface on the entire creative and design part of it. And all the business side, the production side, the marketing side is all handled by our publisher. And so for us, that was a really big benefit to this process. And so it means that we have a great team of people to collaborate with that we've worked on 3 books now with.
Yeah.
And that's been a real ease on the process. I think there's, having talked to other creators who have done it the other way, where they've done it all themselves. Um, it brings a whole bunch of different set of challenges to the process, because then you're responsible for the fulfillment, the shipping, all those things. Kelly and I do not have the brains for that. We don't even want to touch it. That's why we work with our publisher, because we like to do the fun stuff.
Makes sense. So let's final questions from me then before we get to the audience questions is just like blue sky, far future. What are you hoping? What are you moving towards? What are you hoping for with Dungeon Dudes? Where is it going? What do you want it to be?
I
Go ahead, Kelly.
Go ahead. Well,
No,
okay, I have one answer that's like my obvious pie in the sky. This one is not on the table currently, but we hope it is soon. And that is, I dream of the day that we get a Drakkenheim animated series.
Oh, nice.
That's what I want as like my life goal now
Yeah.
is, there's certain people that can't watch 200 episodes
Yeah.
of a
Uh-huh.
3 hour episode actual play from the start. But if we turned it into a animated series, my absolute dream is getting the team that did Castlevania on Netflix
Right.
to do Drakkenheim animated series. That would be like the perfect
Yeah.
thing. So that's my
Yeah.
pie in the sky crazy dream.
Monty.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I love that pie in the sky dream. For me, the vision is the more concrete side of things. Is like, we want to continue doing more actual play content on the show, continue developing the channel. And for us, we found this really amazing model where we started an actual play, we developed a world, we grew an audience around it, and then we started creating books and creating more. And so I love the world of Drakkenheim, and I'm going to continue creating more in that world. But there's also more worlds that are in my imagination that I'd love to bring to life in the same way.
Right.
And so I really look forward to being able to explore some of these future ideas, create actual plays, explore them, and then maybe create books around those ones too. Because, it's just I love what we've created with Drakkenheim, and I love the world of it. And it's one of those things where it's like I love trips there, but I also love trips to other places
Yes.
too.
Yeah.
And so that's my hope is that we can invite our audience and invite other players and invite the community to explore new worlds with us, beyond just Drakkenheim. Although I think that there will be a couple things that, regardless of the worlds that we explore, there's always going to be like some touchstones and calling cards in there, and I'm really excited for like some sort of like multiverse, like the Dungeon Dudes cinematic multiverse.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Always having crossover. I'm in an enviable position of running 2 concurrent campaigns in the Viva la Dirt League world now because we started a second campaign, and everybody's always saying like, is this taking place in the same world? Is it the same timeline? And I'm like, it certainly is. Like, well, we see crossovers. Yeah, maybe. Like if they both happen to go in the same direction, you'll see evidence of one campaign in the other. There's already characters that are starting to cross over, like NPCs that they're meeting that are crossing over the 2 campaigns, and it's a lot of fun. Like I've always been of the sort of cinematic universe idea. Like all of my own home games take place in my own homebrew world, and they're always like they all whatever happens in one, even if it's a one shot at some convention somewhere, whatever happened on that one shot is like canon to the world now. And if somebody else goes to that town, they'll hear the stories of the day that the Wizard's Tower exploded because the party cast fireball on themselves or whatever. Yeah. It's always fun stuff.
Yeah.
All right. We will get to audience questions then. Don't forget to get them in with the Channel Point redemptions so that I can open up the requests queue and see them all at once. Whoops. There we go. All right. Ask a question. We have Frank from Disney asked, I want to know... I want to know if you are resin, metal, stone, or digital. Everyone has a hill to die on with this question, and I assume they're talking about dice. Oops, what's happened?
I like metal dice. I love metal dice. As soon as I started trying metal dice, they just rolled better and heavier, and I will stick to metal dice forever.
For me,
Metal
it's
dice?
sharp edge resin.
For me, like I like metal dice, but I find that they are a little. They're sometimes too much. If you don't have a dice tray, I find that I'm constantly worried
I
about
do have a dice tray.
like messing up the table for sure. And even if you do have a dice tray, sometimes I feel like sometimes they're too shiny. Like if they're a glossy metal, and you have to constantly like, what's that number? Basically, I think there's like an inverse relationship between how beautiful dice are and how readable they are. So as long as they're readable, I don't mind what they're made out of.
Right.
I totally agree with you on the legibility thing.
Yeah, right.
Have it.
Matt asks, usually ask short rest guests, what is a common magic item used in an ingenious or unexpected way? An epic example, for instance, using a bag of holding to capture a sphere of annihilation to essentially shunt a lich to another plane. Or drawing a map inside your cloak of fashions.
I got my favorite story here about a really amazing use of a pretty standard magic item, which was the immovable rod. Monty, you're aware of this story because Monty was DMing this game. This one was not. This one was not on camera. This was pre-Dungeon Dudes in our home game. We were tobogganing down a mountain. There's a lot of backstory to why that was happening, but we were on a giant statue going down a mountain, and we were fighting in an avalanche, and we were fighting a troll on this giant statue while riding an avalanche down. And this troll was like a super troll. It was like giant, and we were having a really hard time, and it kept regenerating. We didn't have any fire, and we were like at a loss on what to do. And finally, one of the player characters, our friend Mitch, reaches in and grabs the immovable rod and just holds it up and clicks it. And because of we're sledding down a hill, as soon as he clicks it, it goes right into the troll, clotheslines him off of the sled, and he gets buried in the avalanche. And it was the single great, like it ended the combat encounter just by using physics.
That's so good. It's like there's always the designers have multiple times gone on record to be like Dungeons and Dragons isn't a physics engine, and because they have that take on things, it can make it very difficult on the Dungeon Master sometimes to have to come up with the answer to the physics questions of like, if I'm falling off of a building and right before I hit the ground I misty step 30 feet back, do I misty step with all of my momentum, or do I just fall that final 30 feet and just take 30 foot of damage instead of 1,000 feet? And questions like, is an immovable rod immovable in the frame of reference of me on the sled, so it's immovable to the sled, or is it immovable to the planet? Because if it's not, like, you need to decide the frame of reference from which it's immovable, because otherwise you click it and it just shoots through the planet because it's orbiting the sun and it's immovable in space. And like, what does like movement isn't easily defined in physics without a frame of reference from which to look at it. And so there's all sorts of things that come up, and so the Dungeon Master has to just be like, I mean, it makes sense. I know what you're trying to do. Bam, immovable rod. But at the same time, if you extend that sled out into like an entire like ship, if you're on a galleon and you're having a pirate ship fight and you click the immovable rod, is the DM going to be like, oh well, I guess I've already established that it's not the vehicle you're on that it's immovable to, so is it? I don't know.
Right.
Or if
I
you're on
mean,
a
for me,
train, immovable rod, does it shoot out the back of the train?
in that case, the reason why I went with it was either way, the immovable rod was gone after.
Yeah, yeah, exactly right.
And so I was like,
You're not getting that back.
so yeah, it's buried under the avalanche with the troll, not coming back. You want to give up a magic item in order to
win this combat? Yeah.
To win this, sure.
That's awesome. I love that. Thank you for the question, Matt. Frank from Disney again asks, this is for all three of you. Has there ever been a storyline, NPC or baddie, etc., that you were so proud of that was never fully realized due to the players either squirreling or dying or otherwise? Any storyline, NPC or baddie that you were like, oh, I'm so excited that they get to meet this person or whatever, and then the players just go completely different direction. Something never comes up.
So much that I had trouble conceptualizing what. Yeah.
I'm so used to running long games that like there was some things in my homebrew campaign that's still going from like 9 years ago when I first started the campaign. There's so many things that have still not really come up. Like one of the warlock that had the amnesia background and gave his sort of made a deal with the archfey. He genuinely still doesn't know who he is and who he was before that, even though I came up with it before we started. So I'm used to just sitting on things and not being bothered by them not coming up yet in game, because I'm like, it'll come up eventually. In like 10 years when we're still playing this campaign, eventually we'll get this payoff and I'll be like, I've been sitting on this for 19 years. And so it doesn't really bother me if a player goes left instead of right. I can just be like, well, no prep is ever wasted. It still exists, and someday it'll come up.
I just remembered what mine is, and so I was running out of the abyss, and there's that whole crew of like NPCs that you travel through the abyss with,
right?
Or through the Underdark with, and I was reading online. It might have been Mike Shea's document on how to run out of the abyss better. He had like a whole document that I actually printed out and put in a binder, and I used it instead of the actual adventure book. But I can't remember if it was his note or something else that I read online. But somebody said a cool idea for the Quaggoth NPC who thinks that he's a elven prince,
right.
and in the book, it's actually just that he's gone insane. But somebody wrote, what if there had been a magical body swap and somewhere there was an elven prince who had the mind of a Quaggoth, and this Quaggoth was the elven prince now.
Yeah.
And I had written this whole plot line that when they got back to the surface, they were going to bring him home and discover that he was in fact the elven prince, and now there was going to be a plot line about undoing this curse.
Yeah.
So naturally that NPC died horribly right before they got to the surface, and it never even came up. It never came up. He was just like, I'm an elven prince. And they were like, yeah, sure you are, buddy.
Sure, buddy.
And then he died in a
like,
terrible accident.
That's probably for the best.
Yeah, and they were like,
he wasn't all
oh, that crazy idiot. Like, and I was just like, man,
you can
nobody
still
gets to
like
know.
the fun thing. It can still be just as fun, if not more so, to have them eventually meet that elven prince that is now in the body of a Quaggoth, and then they finally penny drops and they go, "Oh shit! Oh, we should have done more to keep that guy alive. Oh no, he was telling the truth." That's very funny. I love that. Frank from Disney again. Lots of questions for us, Frank. I love it. Is there any franchise or universe that you've experienced, like Lord of the Rings, Star Wars, Game of Thrones, Dune, etc., that you've always wanted to have a D&D or other TTRPG game type set up?
All right, I got an answer for that one too right away.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
So I hyper focus on things a lot, and when I do, I have to write. Sometimes I get an idea in my head, and regardless of what I'm doing, I have to write. And so I have a 25-page treatment on a Hollow Knight TTRPG.
Oh, nice.
Hollow Knight is one of my favorite video games, and I love the world and the atmosphere of it. And so I got a little obsessive when the idea just popped into my head and said, what if there was a Hollow Knight TTRPG? And then I just had to design what I was thinking of. It's not fully fleshed out or anything, but there's a lot of notes on my computer. of a Hollow Knight TTRPG. One of my favorite
Nice.
games. If you haven't played it, I recommend it.
Monty,
Yeah,
you got
for
one?
me, I'm a huge fan of a bunch of like these weird animated series that came out of Canada in like the 1980s, like rock and roll and heavy metal, and more recently, not that this one didn't come out of Canada, but more recently, Has Been Hotel. And so I kind of have this like vague idea of a TTRPG that is like musical animated
Hmm.
characters in some kind of vaguely fantasy setting of some kind,
Hmm.
being a cool like it's very nebulous, but it's the seeds of
Okay.
it are there.
There's something
I
Yeah,
mean, if
there
we
for
could just do a
maybe
Has
some
Been
point in the future.
Hotel TTRPG.
yeah. I mean that would be really cool. Yeah.
For me, it would be Avatar: The Last Airbender, and like I was in hospital for a week with pancreatitis, and I just binged all of it for the first time because people had been telling me for ages at that point, "Oh, you're gonna love it, you're gonna love it," and I eventually had the time to do it because I had literally was forced to be in a bed for a week, and I was like, "Fine, I might finally actually watch this thing and not feel guilty about spending all this time watching TV."
Well, you know
And I
there is
just
an Avatar
and yeah,
TTRPG.
and I when it came out, I was like, I think I played one episode of it with a friend or something, and I was a little, it felt a little lackluster. But I had by that point already like started working on how to make Avatar in a D&D game, like how to adapt the rules of D&D for Avatar, and then through doing so, I was like, why would I not just make an entirely different TTRPG system that's specifically from the ground up, all about Avatar? So so it is on my to-do list of like watch to actually play the Avatar TTRPG again and like give it a proper go this time, and like this time be the dungeon master, the game master for it, so that I can really delve into the books and understand the system
Nice.
better. Because when I was just a player, I was like, I didn't really feel like I got to experience what the game had to offer.
Yeah.
All right. We have a question. Last one from Frank from Disney is: Did you Did you add a comedy or Easter egg monster in the book, like the Mercer Mulligan Minotaur or something like that? Any?
Yes.
Yes.
Not like a tongue. There's a few tongue in cheek references, but I think the ravenous flora is probably the most on the nose.
Well, I was going to mention one of our. Okay, the Ravenous Flora is Little Shop of Horrors. Uh,
Right.
we have a CR.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
we have a CR 30 monster in the book that is an epic boss that is called the Algorithm, which is my little inside joke. It is a being of order and consequence.
Yeah.
So
The
it
algorithm.
decides,
And
yeah, it decides
and
the fate of all mortals who try to stand before it.
I feel like it should be alignment chaotic. It should because it's very difficult to read sometimes. And like, what? Okay, it doesn't like this video
It
today, I guess.
The algorithm is order out of chaos
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
chaos out of order. Yeah.
I love that. That's very funny. And last question, Kim from Fancy Unicorn. Do you use anything to help you plan out projects, or is it just constantly having chats? Do you use
Lots
any
of
tools for?
spreadsheets.
Yeah, lots of tools
Lots of spreadsheets.
for planning your projects.
Spread spreadsheets and Google Docs.
Yeah.
I will say that on top of spreadsheets and docs, something that I've found is really helpful in the early stages is what I call maps and templates. So when Monty and I are conceptualizing a new project, we usually start with a map of what that project's going to look like. A map is like a one-page overview of like here's all the things that you're going to find in in this book that we're working on. And then we make point form notes under those as we start to conceptualize like here are the subsections within each chapter and
Right.
eventually you get like a map of the book. Then we create templates for the monster book. Template's pretty easy. We made a template of a monster stat block and all of the other headings for like the lore, the different sections that we wanted to include.
Yeah.
And then we use that template, and at least I do. I always just open up the template, copy and paste it, and then start filling it out, almost like I've created my own form fillable like block
Yeah.
things to fill out. And we've done that for every book. Even in the lore book, we created a template on what each lore section would look like. And then that way I can just, if I know I have to create 100 of something, whether it's lore entries, monsters, adventure sites, having a template um, just
It gives you that
allows us
consistency
to.
of like each time somebody goes to any particular entry, they know it's going to start with talking about this, then it's going to move on to talk about
Yeah.
this, and then
Yeah.
that's smart. It's similar
So
to how I organize my notes for DMing and stuff. Like I always have like the sections that I always start with. Like I always have the same headings, and I use the headings a lot in Microsoft Word. I'd use heading 1, 2, and 3 for like the different sections that I use, and I always have a similar structure to all of my campaign notes. Well, that was very insightful. Thank you very much for that. I think we are out of audience questions, and we're also way over time. So we will, I guess, wrap up there. We've got a we've had a short rest. We've had regained a couple hit dice, maybe some spell slots if we're certain subclasses. And just as we're putting our belongings away in this cave, a goblin comes rushing past the mouth of the cave holding a manuscript. There it is.
Let's get him.
Let's get him. And we got to get back to questing. The goblin's name is MacGuffin, of course, being that we're in a writer's universe, the plane of writing. Thank you very much for joining us, guys. Wrap us out one more time with where people can find you and your work, and push them to all of the links and things.
We are the Dungeon Dudes. You can find us on YouTube under that name. You can also, of course, find us on Instagram and Twitter and all of the other social medias if you want to check us out there. But YouTube is where all the fun happens. You can check out our actual play in the worlds of Drakkenheim. And I believe, Rob, you have links below for our current Kickstarter.
Yes. The link is in the chat right there for both YouTube at Dungeon Dudes and get.monstersofdrakkenheim.com. Saves you having to spell out Drakkenheim correctly. Just click that link. Of course, you can, for those of you watching, because this will be on audio form in my podcast later. But those of you watching later, you can find links in the descriptions and things. Those of you watching right now, you can see it on the screen below me. monstersofdrakkenheim.com. Or just Google Dungeon Dudes. They've got you're approaching 500,000 subscribers on YouTube now.
Almost there, yeah.
And so you are likely to see them very quickly if you just search Dungeon Dudes on any of your favorite search engines. So as we end the stream, I like to give the option to my guests as to who to raid at the end of the Twitch stream. Do you have anybody that's online currently that you'd like to give a raid to?
Oh no. I have no idea who's Twitch streaming right now.
Yeah, I have no idea.
You got
What day is it?
Let's have a look then. We've got let's raid into let's see, we've got who's online.
That was a little.
We got Brett Ultimus, we've got Jamie Daggers, we've got Rin Vixen's online, we've got Dork Tales. Dork Tales is a fun one. Dice Legends, are they doing a rerun? It seems like a rerun.
Roll a d6.
We've got the Watcher. We've got let's raid into the Watcher here. Raid the Watcher. The Watcher is Adam King from Viva La Dirt League, one of the guys that I work with on my stuff. So yes, if you are here from the Dungeon Dudes community and you've enjoyed this stream, I'm Robert Hartley, GM. You can see my name below me here. It's Hartley for those listening later. Although if you are listening later, you're probably on my podcast already, so you probably know where to find me. You can find me at Robert Hartley GM all over the internet. I was lucky enough to get the handle on everything. I do Dungeons and Dragons 100% of the time. That is my full-time job. So stick around and drop a follow if you enjoyed today's content. I chat with people usually every week, and I do a whole bunch of other D&D related content too. Thank you for joining me, Kelly and Monty. I will see you guys at Gen Con, no doubt, and if not before. All right, see you later, and see you guys in the next stream. Bye.
Take care. Bye.
Hey, do you like my content, but YouTube can get a little bit much on the bandwidth, especially when you're out and about? Well, I actually have a Robert Hartley GM podcast available in the description below.